This is part 2 of every SpongeBob character's story explained. We're diving into Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs, who they are, what they've been through, and why it all matters. So buckle up, and let's get started. Starting with Patrick.
Patrick Star might seem like just a lazy starfish with no worries, but there's more to him than meets the eye. Beneath his goofy grin and endless naps, Patrick's shaped by his simple dreams and the unspoken need to fit in. He might not always get things right, but his loyalty to his friends and his carefree attitude tell a different story. To really understand Patrick, we have to look at what drives him, and how his laid-back life hides a deeper, surprisingly honest side. So, grab a jellyfish net and let's take a look at the world of Patrick Star. Patrick's life is about as laid back as it gets. He lives under a rock, literally. He has no job, school, or any responsibilities. His entire routine could be summed up in a few words: sleep, eat, and follow SpongeBob around. That's it. And to him, that's enough. He doesn't wake up with a plan. He doesn't have goals. His version of a busy day is deciding between eating a donut or sitting down with a jellyfish net. He's not trying to become anything. He already is. And that's what makes Patrick kind of interesting, because he doesn't change. His whole world is built around the idea that you don't have to move forward to be fine. In the paper, Patrick doesn't take center stage, but the moment he appears, he says a lot without doing much. SpongeBob gets a gum wrapper and turns it into a whole world of fun. He flies with it, plays music with it, even makes origami birds with his mouth. Squidward, of course, hates that. But Patrick, he watches. He laughs, and when he finally gets the paper, he just uses it to spit out his gum. That's it. To Patrick, the paper has no magic. It's not special. He doesn't see the imagination, the joy, or any of that deeper stuff. That's not how his brain works. If something's fun in the moment, great. If not, toss it. He doesn't hold on to things or overthink them. He just is there, floating through whatever's happening, and that's his comfort zone. He doesn't need to create anything. He's happy reacting, playing along when it feels right, or just zoning out when it doesn't. Then you've got Patrick the Game, which shows what happens when Patrick actually tries to do something creative. He makes his own board game, and surprise, it's completely insane. The rules change constantly, the board makes no sense. Squidward ends up getting arrested, but Patrick's not doing any of this out of cruelty. In his mind, this is just how games work. He's mixing stuff together and making it up as he goes, because that's how his brain handles complexity, by turning it into chaos that feels fun. He's not trying to win. He's not even trying to make a real game. He just wants to feel in control for once. For a guy who usually floats behind others, this is him calling the shots. But even when he's in charge, he doesn't lead with thought or care. He leads with impulse. Whatever seems fun in that second, that's the rule now. That's the next move. It's why the game ends with him yelling, "Game over!" and Squidward getting taken away by the cops. Because to Patrick, that feels like a good ending. And if it feels right, that's all that matters. Now take Help Not Wanted, which gives us a rare look at Patrick's relationship with his dad. Cecil drops into his life, literally from the sky, and Patrick instantly treats him like a hero. They hang out, play board games, cook chili. Patrick's whole world gets brighter just because someone he loves is around. He doesn't care that his dad annoys the camp counselors or kind of takes over everything. All Patrick sees is someone fun who makes him feel good. But again, he doesn't think long term. When Cecil leaves at the end, Patrick doesn't fight it. He doesn't cry or get mad. He just waves goodbye and goes back to whatever's next. That's how he handles everything. People come, people go, and he keeps floating along. That's the core of Patrick's world. He doesn't search for meaning because he assumes life already makes sense. He doesn't try to grow because he doesn't think he needs to. He's not dumb. He's just tuned into a totally different frequency than everyone else. He sees the world through the lens of how it feels right now, not how it might feel later. But that kind of mindset can cause problems. When Patrick does get power, like in the fishbowl, it goes badly. He becomes selfish without realizing it. He treats SpongeBob like a servant because he doesn't see the line he's crossing. When no one's around to guide him, he doesn't know where the boundaries are. He doesn't think about how other people feel because deep down, he doesn't realize their feelings might be different from his. And when things go wrong, he moves on without really understanding why. Still, there's something kind of pure about him. He doesn't carry bitterness. He's not jealous, even when he probably should be. He doesn't compare himself to others. He's just happy with what he has, even if that's just a rock and a sandwich. He trusts easily. He forgives quickly. He sees life as something you float through, not something you have to win. And maybe that's why it hits harder when something does affect him. When a friend is in trouble or a real choice shows up, he snaps into focus, even if it's just for a second. There's something underneath all that laziness and confusion. Raw, unfiltered feeling that surprises even him when it comes out. So yeah, right now, Patrick's just living in his little bubble, with no idea what's waiting beyond the next nap. But one day, something will crack through. And when it does, it'll mean more, because he never saw it coming. Patrick's life works because he never changes, but that illusion starts to crack the moment something from the outside gives him a reason to move. Patrick isn't the type to chase anything. He doesn't make plans or ask big questions. He lives under a rock, takes naps whenever he wants, and lets the world happen around him. He's not stuck. He just doesn't see a reason to move. His life runs on jellyfish things and snack breaks. It's quiet, lazy, and fully closed off to change. But even someone like Patrick can be pulled into something strange. In Valentine's Day, that something strange is not getting what he was promised. SpongeBob shows up with big talk about the best gift ever, gets Patrick excited, then takes him to a carnival where nothing happens. Patrick's waiting for this amazing surprise, but all he gets is a handshake. Patrick has never doubted SpongeBob before. When his friend promises something special, it always works out. But now there's this empty space where his gift should be, and Patrick doesn't get it. He spent all day thinking something great was coming, and it just disappeared. Things get worse when Patrick sees everyone else getting real presents from SpongeBob. Chocolates, roses, even a bike for some random fish. Meanwhile, Patrick, his best friend, got a handshake. That's when something changes. Patrick stops going along with things and starts getting mad. By the time Patrick is throwing people around and chasing SpongeBob across the carnival, he's acting completely different. He's not just sitting around anymore. He's going after something, even if it's just wanting to feel important. He's not waiting for good things to happen. He's making something happen himself. The chocolate balloon was real the whole time, just late. But Patrick's anger about not getting it made him do things he'd never done before. Sometimes you don't need to find adventure. Sometimes it finds you when someone breaks a promise and you decide you're not okay with that. It's the same kind of moment in The Googly Artiste. Patrick's not trying to be an artist. He's not even trying to be creative. He just sticks googly eyes all over a rock because SpongeBob told him it looked fun. And somehow, an art critic sees it and calls it genius. That one compliment changes everything. Patrick goes from being useless and confused to being the center of attention. He makes more art. He starts selling it. He gives advice. He becomes a name. Just because someone told him he had value. He doesn't understand the attention, but he accepts it. He starts showing up, putting in effort, leading conversations. And again, that's the important part. He moves. He steps out of his stillness and acts like someone who believes he matters. Until the moment passes. Eventually, the excitement fades. The trend dies down. The art world moves on. And Patrick, he shrugs and lets it go, because he doesn't know how to hold on to it. The thing that gave him a path disappears, and without it, he doesn't know where to go. Both episodes follow the same pattern. Something strange interrupts Patrick's quiet life. Something small, silly even, but it gives him direction. For a while, he follows it, believes in it, builds around it, and then it's gone, and Patrick goes back to sleep. That could make it seem like nothing mattered. But it did, because before the fortune cookies or the art critic, Patrick wasn't even trying. He was just existing. After them, he was doing something. He wasn't thinking deeply or changing who he was, but he wasn't stuck. For a moment, he thought there might be something more. And that's what makes these episodes important. They don't show Patrick becoming someone new. They show him almost becoming someone new. They show what it takes to break through his stillness. Outside validation, belief handed to him from someone else. That's the only thing strong enough to get him moving. And that's why it's so fragile. If Patrick doesn't understand why he's doing something, or if the system around him breaks, he collapses with it. He borrows meaning from others, but he doesn't know how to create it for himself. Even if those moments don't last, they leave a mark. Once you've felt like you're part of something, even something fake, it's hard to go back to feeling invisible. Even Patrick, with his short memory and soft brain, might remember the feeling of being chosen, being followed. And maybe, deep down, he'll want to feel it again, because it felt like something made sense. Just for a second. That's the kind of moment that doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to land hard enough to be remembered, even by a starfish. Patrick moves when others give him meaning, but the moment he's asked to hold that meaning on his own, he shuts down and slips back into the safety of not trying. But before I tell you about that, make sure to subscribe. Patrick doesn't always know when he's being invited into something bigger. He doesn't process change like other people. Sometimes, something exciting happens. Something that could actually move his life forward, but instead of grabbing it, he backs off. Not with fear exactly, more like confusion, or comfort, or just not knowing what to do with it. In I'm With Stupid, Patrick gets a letter. His parents are coming for Starfish Day. and he's panicking. They already think he's dumb, and he dreads the baby talk and condescending pats on the head. He can't stand it, but he can't face it either. SpongeBob offers to help by pretending to be even dumber than Patrick. It's a sweet, logical plan. Make Patrick look smart by comparison. Patrick agrees instantly, but deep down, there's something he doesn't want to admit. If this works, his parents might start expecting more from him. They might see him as someone who can change, someone who can grow, and that's terrifying. Because for Patrick, life as the family disappointment is safe, predictable, too simple to have to reach for anything more. But the plan works too well. His fake parents start praising him. They're amazed at how he keeps SpongeBob in check. They think he's bright, capable, even responsible. And Patrick gets hooked over the thrill of feeling smarter than SpongeBob, of having power over someone else. It's a feeling he's never had before. When SpongeBob tries to break character and remind Patrick it's all pretend, Patrick won't hear it. He's not interested in stopping. It's easier to keep SpongeBob down than face what it would really mean to stand up for himself. Because that would mean admitting he wants to be better. Admitting he could be better. And that's the part Patrick can't do. He'd rather stay stuck in a lie than risk failing at something true. SpongeBob finally snaps and crashes through the wall, done with the whole act. And Patrick is left alone with strangers who turn out not to be his real parents at all. The lie collapses around him, and he's forced to face the truth. In the end, his real parents show up. They love him just as he is, pants and all. They don't expect him to be a genius. They don't want him to be someone else. And Patrick is relieved. He gets the acceptance he wanted without having to change a thing. The universe gives him a pass, and he doesn't have to grow. But even in that relief, Patrick can't quite escape the truth. Sooner or later, he'll still have to face problems that can't be solved by someone else playing dumb. Now contrast that with Big Pink Loser. This is the closest Patrick has ever gotten to becoming something more. He's given the chance, handed it literally. The episode starts with SpongeBob winning an award for Employee of the Month. Again, Patrick has never won anything. He's never tried to, but suddenly he wants to. He wants what SpongeBob has, without knowing what it costs. So SpongeBob offers to help. He gives Patrick a uniform, teaches him how to take orders, how to clean tables, how to be consistent. It's the first time anyone has tried to guide Patrick towards actual responsibility, and for a few seconds, it almost works. But the moment Patrick has to think, he breaks. He can't remember things. He can't follow instructions. His mind gets overwhelmed. He gets overwhelmed. So, what does he do? He copies SpongeBob completely. Voice, mannerisms, SquarePants, everything. Because Patrick doesn't know how to improve as himself. The only version of success he understands is mimicry. If SpongeBob wins awards, then maybe if Patrick becomes SpongeBob, he'll win too. And it works, briefly. Customers cheer. Mr. Krabs approves. Patrick gets attention, but it's not really his. It's borrowed. And deep down, he knows it. The real Patrick is still afraid. Afraid that if he does things his way, he'll fail. So he erases himself and hopes no one notices. But SpongeBob does. Eventually, SpongeBob gets frustrated because Patrick won't be Patrick. And when Patrick realizes that, even after copying perfectly, he still doesn't win the award, he gives up. He throws his uniform away because the version of success being asked of him feels impossible. Because he knows he'll never be like SpongeBob. So he returns to the rock, to his nothing. Because if he stays small, he never has to watch himself fail. That's the pattern. When Patrick is handed something real, a skill, a chance, a purpose, he hesitates. If it involves being seen, being judged, or being different, he slips away. He disappears into jokes, noise, or silence. Anything but pressure. People think Patrick is lazy, but really, he's fragile. Deep down, he knows he doesn't know how to carry things. So instead of risking that, he just stays still. Even when the world calls him out, even when someone says try, he doesn't say no, he just looks away. That's a choice, and it's one he keeps making. Every time he refuses, he inches closer to the moment when refusing won't be an option anymore, when the world won't wait for him to be ready. And maybe, just maybe, he'll have to decide who Patrick really is, without the whistle and without the square pants. Patrick rejects change because no one ever showed him how to carry it, which is exactly where SpongeBob steps in. Patrick doesn't usually ask for help. He doesn't seek advice. Doesn't chase role models. He lives under a rock and mostly likes it that way. But when something new drags him out of that comfort, something strange, exciting, or just different, there's usually one person standing right next to him, ready to push him forward. SpongeBob. SpongeBob isn't a perfect mentor. He's overly optimistic, too fast, too eager, but he believes in Patrick. Because SpongeBob sees potential in everyone, even when no one else does. And that includes Patrick, especially when Patrick has no idea what he's doing. In Big Baby Patrick, Patrick wants to hold on to his childhood. His parents are throwing out his old toys. To stop them, he becomes a baby again, not just in behavior. He puts on a diaper, sucks on a pacifier, crawls across the floor. What starts as an act becomes real. Everyone plays along. No one challenges him. Except SpongeBob. SpongeBob just wants to go jellyfishing. He walks into Patrick's house like it's any other day, until Bunny Star tells him that Patrick's busy being a baby today. SpongeBob pauses. He could leave. Instead, he offers to help. He volunteers to babysit. At first, it's a joke, but when Patrick spits food at him, throws tantrums, and demands constant attention, SpongeBob doesn't quit. He tries harder. He takes Patrick to Goofy Goobers. Babies aren't allowed ice cream. SpongeBob's plan is simple. Let Patrick want something he can't have, and maybe he'll grow out of the act on his own. It backfires. Patrick eats SpongeBob's sundae, gets him kicked out, and then throws a tantrum until he gets a second sundae. But then SpongeBob turns into a baby too, emotionally, literally. He joins Patrick, cries, babbles, flails. He becomes what Patrick is, because trying to be the adult didn't work. That's not mentorship in the traditional sense, but it's something deeper. SpongeBob is showing up for Patrick even when it makes him worse. He's not trying to control him anymore. He's trying to be near him, close enough that maybe, eventually, Patrick will come back. And that's what happens. Patrick sees what SpongeBob becomes, the absurdity of it, the collapse. And while he doesn't say a word about it, you can feel it change. Sometimes the lesson is about realizing who you've dragged down with you and deciding not to keep going. Then, in Patrick's Smart Pants, Patrick shows up with his jellyfishing net, and SpongeBob and Patrick go jellyfishing as usual. They're laughing, playing, and chasing jellyfish through jellyfish fields. Everything feels familiar and fun. But then, Patrick gets too caught up in the excitement. He runs straight off a cliff. He falls headfirst into the ocean below and lands on a strange, brain-shaped coral. SpongeBob rushes down to help. In a panic, he finds Patrick's body, and without thinking, he grabs the closest thing that looks like a head, the brain coral, and sticks it back onto Patrick's body. It works. Patrick wakes up, but something's different. His voice changes. His posture shifts. He starts using big words. He's calm, polite, almost robotic. He's smart now. Not just smart, brilliant. And that's the turning point. In a single moment, Patrick goes from bumbling and carefree to articulate and precise. At first, SpongeBob's excited. His best friend is talking about books, using long words, and acting like a philosopher. Patrick starts saying things like, "My mind is abuzz with thoughts," and "I find your conversation stimulating." He joins Squidward's book club. He impresses Sandy with scientific insight. But something's different too. He's not playing games anymore, not laughing, not jellyfishing. He doesn't even want to go to Goofy Goobers. He tells SpongeBob that their friendship no longer stimulates his intellect. In other words, SpongeBob's too simple, too childish. SpongeBob is heartbroken. He tries to hide it at first, smiling through the pain, but you can see it in his eyes. He's confused, rejected. He's still standing beside Patrick, but it's like his best friend isn't there anymore. Meanwhile, Patrick seems successful. He fits in with smart people. He discusses art with Squidward and logic with Sandy. But despite all the praise, there's a distance in his eyes. The connection is missing. He speaks well, but he's not feeling much. He's not laughing. He's not happy. The smarts made him impressive, but also alone. Later, SpongeBob finds Patrick sitting by himself, and SpongeBob shows him a scrapbook full of memories. Pictures of jellyfishing, jokes, laughter, the old Patrick, the fun, silly moments they shared. He just offers a quiet reminder of who they used to be, and still could be. Patrick looks at the photos, then at SpongeBob, and something inside him softens. He realizes that all the intelligence in the world means nothing if it cuts you off from the people who care about you. The ones who saw your worth before you could pronounce it. The ones who didn't need you to be perfect, just present. So he asks SpongeBob for help. They return to Jellyfish Field. Patrick jumps off the cliff again, intentionally this time, to knock the brain coral off and reattach his original head. It works. He's back. The old Patrick returns. Silly, goofy, happy. And SpongeBob is too. Then, into Save a Squirrel, Sandy's going camping. She says SpongeBob and Patrick aren't invited, but they ignore her and sneak into the van. They get kicked out halfway there, left in the middle of nowhere. At first, it's chaos. Patrick eats all their rations instantly. SpongeBob tries to build a fire and fails. They fight. They panic. Everything breaks. But SpongeBob doesn't give up. He pulls out a stick, tries to spear dinner, fails again. But he keeps moving, keeps trying. Patrick does what Patrick always does. Nothing. He floats, watches, makes jokes, until SpongeBob starts to break down. That's when Patrick says something rare. "Maybe I should try." It's awkward. Too late. And it goes nowhere.
But the fact that Patrick offers to try, that he says those words at all, is a shift. They stumble into a cave. A strange old man tells them there's no escape, that they'll never make it out. And again, Patrick leans on SpongeBob. But SpongeBob's tired, cold, and hungry. And then paranoia sets in. They turn on each other, think the other is going to eat them. It's absurd, but it's also honest. When survival kicks in, trust gets shaky. In the end, it was all a test. The old man was Sandy in disguise. She wanted to see if they could handle the pressure, and somehow, they did, because SpongeBob refused to give up. And Patrick saw that. He didn't take over, he didn't save the day, but he followed. And for once, he saw someone model what effort actually looks like. SpongeBob didn't tell him to be better. He just showed him what better might look like. None of these moments are clean. Patrick doesn't walk away wiser. SpongeBob doesn't always get it right. But underneath the chaos is something steady. Presence. SpongeBob never walks out on Patrick. Not when he's wearing a diaper. Not when he's too smart to care. Not when he's stealing food in the wilderness. And that's what a guide looks like when you don't even know you're learning. Someone who doesn't teach you how to climb, but who sits at the bottom of the mountain with you until you decide to start. Patrick grows because SpongeBob refuses to leave, and that stubborn presence is what finally pushes Patrick to step out and try on his own. Patrick never needed much. He didn't chase dreams, he didn't plan his days, didn't care what people thought. Life to him was a loop. Eat, sleep, float, repeat. Even his mistakes circled back into comfort. This was his world. Predictable, harmless, closed off. But even the most sealed off people have moments where something breaks through. And for Patrick, those moments usually start by accident.
Patrick never needed much. He didn't chase dreams, didn't plan his days, didn't care what people thought. Life to him was a loop. Eat, sleep, float, repeat. Even his mistakes circled back into comfort. That was his world. Predictable, harmless, closed off. But even the most sealed off people have moments where something breaks through. And for Patrick, these moments usually start by accident. It begins in New Student Starfish. Patrick shows up at SpongeBob's doors with a jellyfishing net, expecting another empty day. But instead of his usual aimless floating, he gets an invitation. Come to school. He says yes without thinking. The moment he walks into that classroom, there are expectations. A teacher watching, rules that matter. Patrick doesn't understand any of it, but he's already inside. When Mrs. Puff asks his name, he freezes. The pressure of being seen overwhelms him. So he blurts out 24, random, but somehow everyone laughs, including him. That laugh shows him how good it feels to get a reaction. So he keeps pushing, drawing pictures, passing notes, turning SpongeBob into his partner in crime. But when Mrs. Puff catches them, Patrick gets a warning. But SpongeBob loses a star. His best friend pays the price for Patrick's choices. That's when Patrick learns what consequences actually look like. SpongeBob gets sent to the back of the room, angry. They fight. Patrick dismisses it. Who cares about a stupid star? But SpongeBob does care. And suddenly, Patrick's carelessness isn't just harmless anymore. In detention, when the light bulb burns out and Roger starts dying, Patrick climbs the mountain of light bulbs, actually trying to fix what's broken. He doesn't do it perfectly, but he does it. When it's over, they've saved Roger and earned their stars. Patrick casually mentions he thought this was Spanish class. He's still clueless. Still Patrick. But he's a Patrick who stayed, who tried, who can't go back to floating through life like nothing matters. Patrick stumbles into change without meaning to, but things get real when his fun starts to hurt people. Later, Sing a Song of Patrick hits the same chord but louder. Patrick writes a poem. It's confusing, it barely makes sense, but it matters to him. He wants it to be heard, so he takes it to the radio and begs them to turn it into a song. The host laughs in his face, but Patrick pushes anyway. He insists. He fights to have something personal put on display, even knowing it might get torn apart. They air the song. It's bad. Bikini Bottom hates it. Callers insult it. People play it just to laugh at it. But Patrick listens, proudly. He walks through town as it plays, getting mocked by strangers, and he doesn't flinch, because for once, he doesn't back down. He puts something out there and he's standing by it. This isn't Patrick the sidekick. It's Patrick the participant. He's not echoing SpongeBob or hiding behind his rock. He's choosing to be seen, and not in a costume. Not in someone else's story, but as himself. It doesn't end with victory. The town crashes from laughing too hard. Patrick's song becomes a joke, but he doesn't crumble. He doesn't retreat. He just watches the mess and shrugs. That's what crossing over looks like for him. Not triumph, but standing still while the world reacts. In Firehouse Bob, the shift goes further. Patrick is taking on responsibility. He and SpongeBob become volunteer firefighters. Not because they're heroes, but because someone else didn't want to do it. It's chaotic from the start. Patrick wears the wrong uniform, slides down the wrong pole, fails every drill, but he tries.
He shouts orders, holds hoses, volunteers for ladder duty, and even when he vomits on himself or knocks over equipment, he shows up for the next task. He doesn't joke his way out. He doesn't hide behind SpongeBob. He participates. There's a scene where a fire breaks out in the station itself. Larry, their trainer, gets trapped. And it's Patrick, useless, clumsy Patrick, who climbs back in, gets soaked by the hose, and helps anyway. He doesn't save the day. The fire comes back, but that's not the point. The point is that he didn't run. He could have stayed home, eaten ice cream, waited for things to pass, but he chose chaos, noise, pressure. That's not who he was. He's not fully changed. He's still Patrick, but he stepped into a role that expected something from him and didn't immediately collapse when he couldn't deliver. Each of these moments, whether it's the card, the song, or the fire hose, pushes Patrick a little further away from his old world. Not with force, with friction, with enough weight that he can't just float anymore. He learns what it's like to care, to fail publicly, to get laughed at and stay standing. He doesn't get a reward, but he keeps going anyway. That's where the real change starts. Patrick grows by stumbling into moments that bruise his ego just enough to make him stay awake. And that slow discomfort sets the stage for the real tests, where play turns into pressure and friendship stops being easy. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying the video so far, then don't forget to subscribe. Really helps out a lot.
Patrick doesn't understand that he's being tested. He doesn't realize that the people around him are slowly expecting more. More thought, more effort, more awareness. But once he starts stepping into that unfamiliar space, every interaction becomes heavier. Play turns into conflict, friendship becomes complicated, and the safety he used to feel just being himself begins to slip. In Sandcastles in the Sand, it all starts with a beach trip. Patrick and SpongeBob build sandcastles beside each other, enjoying the sun, the quiet, and the rhythm of play. But things shift fast. One sandcastle bumps into the other, then a wall goes up, then another. Patrick builds higher. SpongeBob retaliates. Before long, the castles turn into bunkers, then weapons. They're not friends building side by side anymore. They're enemies in a full-blown war. Patrick throws everything he has into defending his space, not just because he wants to win, but because he suddenly feels like losing means being less. When SpongeBob offers peace, Patrick rejects it, not with cruelty, but with pride. He doesn't want the fun back. He wants to win. That's what makes the ending land harder. Both castles fall. Everything is wrecked. No one wins. They're left standing in a pile of broken sand, too tired to keep going. But that collapse isn't empty. Patrick's never cared about something enough to defend it, even if it meant hurting someone else. And now he's tasted what that feels like. How good it is at first, and then how lonely it becomes. That's a lesson he doesn't talk about, but you can feel it hanging in the quiet when the dust settles. The Battle of Bikini Bottom begins with a simple disagreement. Patrick doesn't like soap. SpongeBob does. At first, it's a gross-out joke. Patrick eats out of trash bins, wipes his feet on the table, and smears gunk wherever he goes. But he's not just being dirty. He's proud of it. He treats filth like a badge of honor. And SpongeBob, trying to help, responds with cleaning supplies and rules. Patrick fights back harder. Soon, it's another full-blown battle. One side coated in slime, and the other drowning in disinfectant. And Patrick refuses to admit he's wrong. He doesn't want to be clean. He wants to be himself, even if that version of himself grosses everyone out. By the time the episode ends, there's no apology, no truce, just two friends, exhausted, covered in the wreckage of a moral fight neither of them really won. But Patrick learned something. Not everyone will accept you for who you are if who you are is hard to be around. And sometimes, defending your habits means losing something else. Trust, closeness, and peace. He doesn't change, but he walks away knowing that being himself can have consequences. That idea doesn't go away. In Yours, Mine, and Mine, Patrick and SpongeBob split the cost of a crusty kid's meal that comes with a toy. SpongeBob expects to share it. Patrick assumes it's his. The entire episode becomes a quiet power struggle over something tiny but symbolic. Patrick licks the toy to mark his territory. He hides it when SpongeBob reaches for it. And even when SpongeBob calmly asks for a turn, Patrick ignores him. He's not joking. He's not playing dumb. He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't care. Until the very end, when he swallows the toy whole, right in front of SpongeBob. For the first time, Patrick makes a conscious decision that hurts someone, and he does it anyway. SpongeBob leaves. Patrick is left alone at the table. Toy gone, friendship cracked. There's no laughter, no excuse, just silence. That moment says everything. Patrick didn't steal the toy because he needed it. He stole it because he didn't know how to give it up. And the weight of that choice, the stillness of being right and alone, stays with him. There's no fix, just a line that got crossed. And Patrick knows it. In Dumped, Patrick gets something he's never had before. Someone choosing him over SpongeBob. When Gary suddenly starts following Patrick around instead, Patrick doesn't question why. He just enjoys it. For once, he's the favorite. Patrick walks around with Gary like he's won the lottery. He's completely oblivious to how much this is destroying SpongeBob. When SpongeBob breaks down and begs Gary to come home, offering unlimited freedom, trashing his own furniture, carving up his prized Squidward sculpture, Patrick just watches with smug satisfaction. "How pathetic," he says, like he's above all that desperate emotion. But Gary doesn't actually care about Patrick. He just wants the cookie in Patrick's pocket. When that cookie disappears into Gary's mouth, so does all of Gary's interest. The snail immediately crawls back to SpongeBob, leaving Patrick standing there like an idiot. "I thought what we had was special," Patrick says to nobody, his voice small and broken. It's the first time Patrick has ever been on the receiving end of rejection. The first time he's realized that someone was only using him. The hurt in his voice is raw and real. He genuinely believed Gary liked him. Now he knows how it feels when someone you care about just leaves. It's a crash course in heartbreak for someone who's never had his heart in anything before. Rule of Dumb gives Patrick everything. Power, status, attention. He becomes king of Bikini Bottom and turns it into a personal playground. At first, it's fun. He orders room service, makes SpongeBob carry him on a throne, and declares his wishes as law. But the power changes him. He stops listening, takes people's homes, starts stealing food from strangers. The town turns on him. SpongeBob tries to reason with him, but Patrick's drunk on control. He believes he deserves it. Eventually, it catches up to him. The cheers turn into silence. Friends leave. The crown feels heavier. Patrick looks around and sees what he's done in a long pause, and he gives it up willingly because he sees what he became and doesn't want to be that person anymore. That's a first for Patrick. Recognizing that something he thought would make him feel bigger only made him feel empty. In that sinking feeling, Patrick and SpongeBob can't stand being apart. Squidward forces them to stay on their own property, so they start digging tunnels to see each other. At first, it's innocent, then obsessive. Patrick keeps digging. The tunnels get deeper, wider, riskier. Soon, the whole neighborhood starts to shake. Walls collapse, floors break open, Squidward's house is destroyed, and Patrick doesn't stop until it's too late. What makes this moment different is what happens afterward. Patrick doesn't laugh. He doesn't point fingers. He looks at the damage and agrees when SpongeBob says they should stop. It's the first time Patrick reaches a limit, because he understands that his want, his need for constant closeness, caused harm. And for someone who usually lives in a world of impulses, that pause is huge. Rise and Shine shows none of that chaos. Just Patrick, alone in his home, going through a day without anyone watching. He wakes up, brushes his eyes, toasts his shoes, tries to eat a bar of soap. He talks to inanimate objects like they're old friends. There's no plot, no conflict. Just a slow, quiet unraveling of a life built entirely around simplicity and confusion. And it's more revealing than anything else. Because without SpongeBob, without the town, without expectations, Patrick is still lost. Still reaching for something to hold. The sock puppet, the faucet, the soap, they're not jokes. They're signs of someone who never quite figured out what it means to be known. And after all the battles, toys, songs, and thrones, that moment, brushing his teeth with butter, shows what's really been missing the whole time. Understanding. These are the moments that stretch Patrick. He doesn't always get it right, but he shows up. He hurts people. He tries to fix it. He pulls away, then moves back in closer. And through it all, the space around him shifts. From a harmless rock to a complicated world full of people who expect more than just jokes. And whether he realizes it or not, he's starting to expect more from himself too. Patrick learns how much damage he can cause just by being himself. But it's not until the damage hits the person he loves most that his need to be seen finally explodes into something raw, selfish, and real. Patrick doesn't plan to become part of something bigger than himself. He doesn't prepare for it. He just stumbles into it, like he always does. Head first, heart half open, and brain mostly off. But in the Fry Cook games, it's different. He doesn't just trip into someone else's story. He steps into one of his own. And for once, it's not silly, it's not fun, it's personal. It starts loud. The crowd roars, flags wave, the stadium is full. Bikini Bottom's biggest fast food event, the Fry Cook Games, has begun. It's part Olympics, part commercial, all chaos. SpongeBob enters proudly, representing the Krusty Krab, but then a twist hits. Patrick shows up too, wearing a chum bucket uniform. His arrival shocking, dramatic, emotional. SpongeBob is stunned. He sees it as a betrayal, but Patrick isn't joking. He stands proud, flexing, glaring. He declares his loyalty to Plankton, then slaps SpongeBob with a tray and says he wants to beat him. There's no smile on his face, no confusion in his voice,
This is war. It doesn't matter that Patrick has never cooked. It doesn't matter that he doesn't even understand the games. What matters is that, for the first time, he's willing to stand on his own, even if it means standing against the only person who ever stood by him. That's what makes it sting. As the games begin, Patrick throws himself into every challenge with wild, raw energy. He doesn't think, he reacts. He lifts weights made of patties, he hurdles ketchup bottles, he jumps through fiery hoops, and with every round, the rivalry gets hotter. SpongeBob matches him step for step, not because he wants to hurt him, but because now it's personal. This is about friendship, about loyalty, about feeling abandoned. Patrick doesn't blink. He calls SpongeBob a yellow traitor. He shouts about how he's tired of always being in someone else's shadow. He wants to be taken seriously, to matter. And the only way he knows how to do that is to fight for it. This isn't the goofy sidekick anymore. The stadium screams. The tension is thick. SpongeBob doesn't understand what changed. And honestly, neither does Patrick. He doesn't have words for it. He just knows something inside him wants to be seen. And for once, being funny isn't enough. As the final challenge begins, the tension explodes. They're both pushed to the edge. They start wrestling, flinging condiments, throwing fists. It stops being about food. Now it's a brawl. Public, messy, and emotional. They're not competing. They're collapsing. And then comes the moment. Mid-fight, their shorts get ripped off. Everyone gasps. There, on Patrick's underwear, SpongeBob's face. On SpongeBob's, Patrick's. Suddenly, the absurdity lands. It hits them both. They remember. All this time, all this pain, all this screaming, they're still each other's best friends. The crowd disappears. The anger drops. They cry. They hug. They whisper, "Let's never fight again," and mean it. That's what makes this moment so raw. It was about needing space and not knowing how to ask for it. About needing recognition and not knowing how to earn it. About finally stepping out on your own and realizing you didn't want to be alone. This is where the real break happens for Patrick. He didn't just face SpongeBob. He faced the fear that maybe he didn't matter without him. That he was only ever the sidekick, the joke, the punchline. And even though the fight got ugly, even though it hurt, he stood up for himself. And then, more importantly, he stepped back down, out of love. That's a hard thing to do. To want space but not sever ties. To want change but not destruction. Patrick learns all of that here. Not in a classroom, not with a speech, but in the dirt. Surrounded by cheering strangers, looking into the eyes of the only person who's ever really seen him. And he didn't run. He showed up. And in his own weird, ridiculous way, he was brave. Patrick finally stands up for himself in the loudest way possible. But it's in the quiet, messy aftermath that he starts learning how to actually take care of something other than his own pride. Sometimes the biggest reward is something you realize about who you are and how your actions shape the people around you. For Patrick, that realization comes slowly, through failure. Through doing the wrong thing so many times that, for once, he notices the silence afterward. He notices what's missing. In Pets That Are Pat, that silence is the loudest thing he hears. It begins with SpongeBob excitedly preparing to leave for his grandma's birthday party. The only problem? He needs someone to take care of Gary. After Squidward shuts the door in his face, SpongeBob turns to Patrick. Patrick agrees without hesitation. He's happy to help. He's confident, proud, and entirely unqualified. SpongeBob hands him a care schedule, which Patrick holds upside down, nods at, and immediately throws away. From that moment, it's all downhill. Patrick eats Gary's food, floods the house, and even tries to give Gary a flamethrower bath. SpongeBob keeps calling to check in. Patrick keeps saying everything is fine. And in his own mind, it is. He's not ignoring the chaos. He just doesn't see it. That's what makes it hit harder. Patrick genuinely wants to do a good job. He just doesn't know what that actually means. When the house finally floods and SpongeBob returns in a panic, the moment shifts. He rushes upstairs expecting to find Gary harmed, and instead finds Gary calmly reading a book to Patrick. The scene is still ridiculous. Patrick still thinks the book is called Meow Meow Meow, but he's just sitting, listening. It's not a fix, but it's honest, and that's new. The takeaway isn't that Patrick becomes a responsible adult overnight. It's that for once, he stays in the discomfort. He doesn't explain it away. He doesn't run. He just sits in the mess, quietly listening to the very creature he nearly destroyed. That moment stays with him. And later, in Sanctuary, we see a version of Patrick that might have remembered. This episode begins when Gary finds a stray snail and brings her home. SpongeBob names her Senor Poopus and builds a safe space for her. It's a sweet setup. But it quickly grows more complicated when Patrick shows up with a cardboard box full of baby snails. He says he found them abandoned. Nobody asked him to help. He just did it. That small detail matters. He steps into it voluntarily. That might seem like nothing, but for Patrick, that shift is huge. He's not helping because someone trusted him. He's helping because he chose to. It's chaotic. Of course it is. He builds an entire sanctuary out of garbage and lets snails crawl all over him. He doesn't know how to organize or clean up or manage, but he keeps showing up. That's what makes this version of him more interesting. He's still making mistakes, feeding them weird food, losing track of some of them, but there's care in it, effort. And when the mother snail eventually comes back to collect her babies, Patrick doesn't cry or throw a tantrum. He watches quietly. He understands. He even smiles. He doesn't need the snails to stay to feel useful. He just needs to know he did something that mattered. And in that moment, he lets go. That's not something he would have done before. Patrick doesn't suddenly figure out everything or become a whole new person. It's not clean like that. It's more like small moments that slip in when he's not looking. Tiny shifts in how he reacts, how he shows up. He's still loud, still confused half the time, still doing things that make no sense. But something's changing, slowly. Not all at once, not in a big way, but enough to notice if you're paying attention. Patrick finally learns to care without being told to, but caring just makes the failure feel heavier. Before we get to that, hit the subscribe button and let's get back to the video. Patrick's version of moving forward looks a lot like stumbling. After everything he's been through, the emotional slip-ups, the quiet realizations, the moments where he's been forced to sit still, he starts to edge back into his usual routine. But the world he's returning to isn't quite the same. And more importantly, he's not the same either. He doesn't know it yet. That's what makes the next part of the journey hard. He's not trying to become better. He's just trying to get back to normal. But normal isn't what it used to be. In the executive treatment, it starts small. Patrick walks into the Krusty Krab just looking for a meal. He sees fish in suits eating something fancy, and when he's told he's not allowed to have it because he's not an exclusive, Patrick wants to be an executive because he wants to feel important. So he grabs a tie and glasses, walks back in, and tries to fake his way through the system. That one decision kicks off a surreal spiral. Suddenly, Patrick is dragged into a corporate building with real business people who think he's one of them. He's terrified, but he keeps quiet, because if he admits he doesn't belong there, he could be arrested for espionage. So instead, he fakes it. He bluffs. He keeps smiling. He goes to meetings. He takes on tasks. And for a while, it actually works. Nobody sees through him, but that comes at a cost. Underneath all the suits and boardrooms, Patrick is panicking. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's trapped by the role he's created. Every minute he stays silent, the lie gets deeper. And it's not funny, it's claustrophobic. And the second he's finally caught, he tells them the truth and they throw him in jail. It sounds like a punchline, but there's something real under it. Because Patrick didn't end up here by chasing power. He ended up here by trying to feel like he mattered. The tie, the glasses, the act, they were all attempts to earn something that wasn't meant for him. And in the end, when SpongeBob visits him in jail and reminds him that he is technically an executive, because he runs the laundry room on Thursdays, it flips everything. Patrick realizes that identity isn't something you force. It's something that shows up in the small stuff. The boring stuff. The stuff you forget to brag about. And then, in the donut of shame, that pressure comes back. But this time in a much smaller way. Patrick wakes up after SpongeBob's tea party and finds his friend passed out, holding a donut. Patrick takes it just because it's there, and it looks good. He even sets it on fine china because a donut this nice deserves to be served on fine china. But the second he's about to eat it, he remembers SpongeBob saying how special this donut was. How it could really make a guy happy. After everything Patrick's been through, after learning how much his choices affect others, his conscience kicks in at exactly the wrong moment. The angel and devil donuts appear on his shoulders, and for once, Patrick actually listens to the angel. He spits the donut out. "It's SpongeBob's!" he cries. But then comes the real test. SpongeBob calls. He's coming over with a videotape of the party. Patrick panics, but because he's about to get caught, he runs around his house trying to hide the evidence. Under a rug, but SpongeBob might step on it. In the toaster, but SpongeBob might want toast. In the toilet, but SpongeBob might need to use it. He even tries climbing into an imaginary attic, twice, failing both times. When SpongeBob finally arrives, Patrick can't handle it. He breaks down crying before SpongeBob even asks. "I took it, SpongeBob! I took your donut! I'm sorry!" He's sitting with the weight of disappointing someone who matters to him, and he confesses before he has to. The guilt is eating him alive. And then, the twist. It was his donut all along. A birthday gift. SpongeBob had been trying to make him happy. The donut is stale and gross by the end. Patrick still offers to share it, but it makes SpongeBob sick. It's awkward, imperfect. But that's the point. Growth isn't one straight climb. It's jagged. It repeats itself. And Patrick is learning that sometimes caring about your friends means you torture yourself over nothing. But you do it anyway.
because the alternative is worse. The hardest part is living with the fear that you might hurt someone you love, even when they're trying to be kind to you. Patrick learns how much damage a small mistake can do, but the real test comes when the people he loves become the ones causing it. There's always that one moment near the end, when everything that's been building finally hits, with a choice. Patrick's been stumbling towards this without even knowing it. He's made mistakes, hurt people, tried to help in ways that didn't help, but now things come full circle. He gets one last chance to show if anything actually stuck. It starts with big sister Sam. One day, Patrick's long-lost sister shows up. Her name's Sam. She's huge, emotional. She screams, she cries, she hugs too hard. Patrick's thrilled. He brings her home like it's the best surprise ever. SpongeBob tries to be polite. Squidward just wants to survive. At first, it's fine. But then Sam starts causing real problems. She smashes Squidward's house. She wrecks things without meaning to. Gets mad at SpongeBob just for looking confused. She's not trying to be cruel. She just doesn't have a pause button. And Patrick, he defends her over and over. Says things like, that's just how Sam is. And like that makes it okay. But after a while, it stops being funny. SpongeBob backs off. Squidward's out of patience, and Patrick starts to see the cracks. He's stuck between two sides, someone he loves from the past and the people who stood by him every day since. He keeps smiling, but it's different now, like he knows this is twisting but doesn't know how to stop it. And then, without drama, something changes. Patrick just stops protecting her from the truth. That's all. He lets the silence break, and in that tiny, quiet moment, you can feel it. He knows love isn't just saying yes no matter what. Sometimes it's knowing when to step back. Then there's Patrick Man. Patrick decides he's going to be a superhero. He makes a costume, invents a name, and runs around town trying to stop crimes that aren't happening. It's silly at first. He blocks traffic, gets in people's way. SpongeBob plays along, kind of. It's harmless, but Patrick takes it too far. He starts seeing danger everywhere. He tackles random citizens, shouts orders, tries to save people who didn't ask for it. And when SpongeBob tries to talk to him, Patrick doesn't hear it. He's locked in. He thinks he's finally important, that helping people means being in control. Then he goes too far. He causes an accident. Someone gets hurt. And just like that, everything stops. The people he wanted to protect are upset and disappointed. That hits him harder than any punch ever could. He looks around and sees it's just a mess. So, quietly, Patrick takes off the costume. He just knows he was trying to be something big, but the moment he let go of that, he became something better. These aren't hero moments in the usual sense. Patrick doesn't defeat a villain. He doesn't save the town, but he does something harder. He steps back. He admits, without saying it, that maybe being good isn't about being loud. Maybe it's about knowing when to stop. That's the turning point. Because finally, he listens with his choices. And once you see that shift, you can't unsee it. He's still Patrick, still weird, still kind of a mess, but now he pauses. And that pause, that's everything. Patrick learns that real strength is knowing when to stop. And yet, the hardest battle comes when he tries to return just as himself. Coming back is sometimes just about showing up again, without the act, and without needing anyone's approval. Patrick doesn't return stronger or smarter. He doesn't return to cheers. He just comes back as himself, and somehow that's harder than anything he did before. In That's No Lady, it all starts with panic. Patrick overhears a stranger say something that sounds threatening, that he has to leave town. Patrick doesn't ask questions. He just runs. He assumes the worst. That's what Patrick does when fear takes over. He disappears. And when he comes back, he's not Patrick anymore. He's Patricia, a green bikini, a blonde wig, a forced smile. He reinvents himself completely, hoping that if he looks different, maybe the world will treat him differently too. And it does. Suddenly, people are kind. Mr. Krabs flirts with him. Squidward competes for his attention. No one recognizes him. And Patrick, to his own surprise, likes how that feels. But being someone else takes work. He softens his voice, changes how he moves, tries to be polite, gentle, and helpful. For a while, it seems like it's working. He has a job. People praise him. It looks like a fresh start, but the cracks show fast. The compliments don't feel real. The smiles feel heavy. The act wears him down. And Patrick, who never cared what anyone thought, suddenly can't stop performing for them. He keeps going, giggling, nodding, faking it, but inside, he's slipping. There's no one to talk to. No room to just be. It's like watching yourself from the outside and realizing you're not in control anymore. Eventually, it builds to a moment. Patrick walks into the Krusty Krab, ready to confess. He starts to take off the disguise, but then he sees the stranger who started it all, the one who chased him out of town. And just like that, the fear comes back. That pauses everything. Change doesn't happen in one clean breath.
And Patrick, who looked ready to be honest, suddenly isn't. He hides again, because that old fear still has a grip. And then something different happens. SpongeBob, who's been quietly watching the whole thing unfold, steps in. He tells the stranger, "If you want Patrick, you'll have to go through me." It's a small act, but it lands with a punch. Because this time, Patrick doesn't respond with a joke or a meltdown. He doesn't say anything at all. He just watches. He hears it. And when the stranger suddenly explains he wasn't chasing Patrick at all, just trying to sell a vacation package, something clicks. Patrick laughs. Not a big, silly laugh, just something soft. The fear was never real, but the way it shaped him, that was. He takes off the wig, the bikini. He stands there, naked, awkward, and honest. The whole story is about pressure. The kind of pressure that convinces you that who you are isn't good enough. And maybe if you become someone nicer, quieter, easier to understand, people would finally accept you. Patrick never said those things out loud. He didn't need to. He lived it. But now, he walks out the door with SpongeBob, as just two friends, side by side again. The conversation isn't deep, but he came back with just himself. And that's the thing he'd been running from the whole time. The town didn't change. People still laughed at him. Squidward rolled his eyes. Mr. Krabs fired him. But Patrick didn't fold this time. He let the moment pass, let the weirdness stay, and stepped back into his old life. And that's what returning looks like when you've actually been somewhere. He's still Patrick, still weird, still loud when he shouldn't be. But now, he doesn't need to become someone else just to be accepted. He can stand in his own skin, even if it's pink, awkward, and confusing. Some characters come back with trophies. Some come back with peace. Patrick comes back barefoot, broke, and completely himself. And it's enough.
Patrick floats through life avoiding meaning. And now we're going to talk about Squidward, the guy who feels cursed for wanting it.
Squidward tentacles might seem like just the grumpy neighbor in a show about a talking sponge, but there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. Beneath the sarcasm and eye rolls, Squidward is a guy stuck in a life he never wanted, working a job he hates, surrounded by people who drive him crazy, all while holding onto dreams that feel just out of reach. He's not a villain, just a guy trying to make sense of it all. So, grab your clarinet and let's take a closer look at Squidward's story. Squidward Tentacles lives in the underwater town of Bikini Bottom, and boy is he always grumpy. He's the teal octopus with a big head and eyes that always look half closed and bored. Before anything exciting even happens in his life, you can tell exactly who Squidward is. He's stuck in his daily routine that gives him some comfort, but also drives him crazy. It's like he both needs his predictable life and hates it at the same time. Squidward lives in this funny Easter Island head-shaped house that's stuck right between SpongeBob and Patrick's places. Talk about bad luck. It's like his house situation perfectly shows his whole life problem. He's trapped between his super cheerful neighbors who drive him nuts, while he's desperately trying to be all fancy and sophisticated. Poor guy can't escape. His address is basically a daily reminder of everything that frustrates him. Squidward works as a cashier at the Krusty Krab fast food joint, but he thinks the job is totally beneath him. He sees himself as way too talented and cultured for it. Every day looks the same. He forces himself to go in, barely puts any effort into taking orders, and just watches the clock until he can leave. He's basically just showing up for the paycheck and doing the absolute minimum. And don't get me started on how many times he sighs and rolls his eyes at SpongeBob, who's way too excited about everything. Squidward's all about finding some quiet time away from everyone else. His Sundays are super important to him. He plans them out really carefully with all these little relaxation routines like eating chocolate candies, foot rubs, reading, painting, and playing his clarinet. He thinks these hobbies make him better than other people who just enjoy dumb entertainment. In that episode, Good Neighbors, he actually schedules his entire Sunday down to the exact minute. He even has this special pedicure he calls his Sunday Special that happens at exactly 4 p.m. Talk about being particular. Here's the thing about Squidward. He totally sees himself differently than everyone else does. He thinks he's this amazing artistic genius, but in reality, his clarinet playing is pretty awful, his self-portraits are just okay at best, and his dance moves only impress himself. His house is full of his own artwork that he believes shows off his sophisticated taste, but he has no clue that his art is actually pretty mediocre. Remember that episode Squidville where he finds other octopuses just like him? He was so happy hanging out with people who also liked weird interpretive dance, clarinet music, and even that canned bread, which is such a perfect joke about how he tries so hard to be fancy and different. Squidward's relationships are basically just one frustration after another. Whenever he deals with SpongeBob and Patrick, things always end badly. Like in those episodes The Paper and Good Neighbors. All he wants is some alone time, but they're constantly barging in with their so-called friendly gestures that he never asked for. What really gets under his skin is that no matter how many times he pushes them away, SpongeBob and Patrick stay ridiculously cheerful and nice to him. They honestly think they're being good friends and neighbors, even while they're completely ruining his day. The really sad thing about Squidward is that he's totally wrong about what makes people happy. He thinks you need fancy stuff, other people's approval, and to stay far away from the silly fun his neighbors enjoy. Remember that episode, The Paper, where he gets super jealous watching SpongeBob have an absolute blast with just a gum wrapper? Squidward had called it trash earlier. Then, when he finally gets his hands on that wrapper, he can't figure out why it doesn't make him happy too. That's when it hits him. Maybe the problem isn't SpongeBob or the paper, but something inside himself. Squidward's life is such a perfect example of how someone's flaws can make for a great story. His pride gets in the way of enjoying simple stuff. He's so impatient that he makes crazy decisions, like trading everything he owns for a gum wrapper or putting in that dangerous security system. And he's totally clueless about what could actually make him happy. But here's the interesting part. Underneath all that grumpiness, there's something more to him. Sometimes he lets his guard down and actually has fun with SpongeBob. Or like when he left that supposedly perfect Tentacle Acres community to come back to the chaos of living on Conch Street because he was lonely. The thing that makes Squidward so interesting is that even with all his flaws, we totally get why he's frustrated. I mean, his wish for some peace and quiet is pretty reasonable. SpongeBob and Patrick would drive anyone crazy. His life isn't just where the story starts. It's this never-ending loop of frustration and failed attempts to escape that makes him one of the most relatable cranky characters in cartoons. Squidward's life is a loop of dull routines and quiet frustrations, but it never stays peaceful for long, as unexpected disruptions keep forcing him to face the parts of himself he'd rather ignore. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's plenty more on the way, and you won't want to miss it. Squidward's sort of comfortable, but not really, routine keeps getting messed up by things that force him to face parts of himself he really doesn't want to deal with. Usually, these disruptions come from his old high school rival, Squilliam Fancyson. Just having Squilliam show up is enough to completely wreck the fragile peace Squidward has tried so hard to build around himself. When Squilliam shows up during Squidward's lunch break with all his yes-men followers, it immediately hits all of Squidward's insecurities. As Squilliam brags about his private yachts, private lakes, and private heliports, you can practically see Squidward's fake confident image falling apart. This isn't just running into someone. It's like everything Squidward pretends to be is being challenged. He can't handle admitting he's just a cashier, so Squidward tells a huge lie. He claims he owns a 5-star restaurant. That one fib sends him racing to turn the Krusty Krab into some fancy dining place before Squilliam shows up that very night. This same thing keeps happening in Squidward's life. His quiet existence gets totally disrupted by stuff that forces him to either grow or just hide deeper in his make-believe world. Like in Squidville, when his house gets wrecked and he runs off to live with other octopuses just like him. At first, he thinks he's found heaven, but then the perfect sameness of Tentacle Acres starts to feel empty in a whole new way. Everyone riding bikes at the same time, everyone loving the same weird canned bread, everyone doing identical routines. It all starts feeling more like a prison than freedom. The Krusty Towers episode really shows something interesting about Squidward. When Mr. Krabs suddenly turns the restaurant into a hotel, Squidward gets stuck having to serve everyone. The hotel's motto, "We shall never deny a guest even the most ridiculous request," basically becomes torture for someone with as little patience as Squidward. Patrick keeps making crazier and crazier demands until Squidward just can't take it anymore. But here's the cool part. Instead of just suffering through it or running away like usual, Squidward actually quits, then comes back as a guest himself and uses Mr. Krabs' own rules against him. It's one of those rare times where Squidward doesn't just react to the chaos. He actually gets clever and turns it around. Even small incidents actually reveal a lot about Squidward. In The Paper, he gets super annoyed watching SpongeBob have so much fun with just a thrown-away gum wrapper. But then it turns into this weird obsession. That wrapper starts to represent everything Squidward doesn't have: creativity, being content, and finding joy in simple things. He gets so fixated that he ends up trading all his stuff for this worthless little scrap, only to find out there's nothing special about the paper itself. The happiness was coming from inside SpongeBob all along, something Squidward just can't seem to tap into. These disruptions are actually chances for him to take a good look at who he really is. Every time Squilliam shows up, every time his house gets wrecked, every time SpongeBob shows him what real happiness looks like, Squidward has to make a choice. Keep going down this grumpy, pretentious path, or actually try something different. Squidward keeps missing his chances to grow. When Patrick makes those crazy hotel demands, instead of rethinking his whole approach to service and self-respect, Squidward just turns around and does the same thing to Mr. Krabs. And remember when he moved to that octopus neighborhood? He doesn't leave because he's had some deep realization about himself. He just gets bored and acts out. Then there's the whole Squilliam situation. Instead of accepting where he is and working toward real success, Squidward just pretends to be something he's not. It's pretty sad how he keeps taking the wrong lessons from these experiences. Sometimes you can actually see Squidward growing a little. There are these brief moments when he connects with SpongeBob and Patrick, even though he usually can't stand them. And occasionally, he'll find himself enjoying simple things, or actually admitting he's not perfect. These little glimpses show that deep down, under all that grumpiness, Squidward could actually change if he wanted to. He just needs to start seeing all those annoying disruptions not as problems, but as chances to try something new. All that crazy stuff that keeps messing up Squidward's neat and tidy life isn't just there to make us laugh. It's actually like the universe is constantly giving him chances to break out of the box he's put himself in. The big question about Squidward is whether he'll ever actually take those chances. That's what makes his character so interesting to watch. Squidward's routine is periodically unsettled by moments that hint at change, yet his hesitation to embrace them keeps him anchored in familiar discomfort. Squidward keeps backing away from chances to grow, and when you look closer at why he hesitates, you see there's more to him than just being cynical. 2 episodes really show this pattern well: Band Geeks and Krusty Krab training video. They perfectly capture how Squidward resists change and what he loses because of it. In Band Geeks, we see Squidward's biggest moment of giving up right at the most emotional part of the episode. After 4 practice sessions that just keep getting worse, he completely throws in the towel. He tells his terrible band,
You took my one chance in happiness and crushed it into little, tiny, bite-sized pieces. Don't bother showing up tomorrow. I'll just tell them you all died in a marching accident.
This all comes down to how Squidward sees himself. When he answers the phone saying he's the house of unrecognized talent, you can tell his whole identity is wrapped up in being seen as artistic and sophisticated. The Bubble Bowl isn't just about music. It's about proving he's the person he claims to be. If he fails, everyone would see that he's just a fast food cashier, not some misunderstood genius. When he sighs,
I guess I'm a loser for that too.
you get a glimpse of his real insecurity. Deep down, he's afraid he's not actually special. Each rehearsal just confirms Squidward's belief that things can't change. On day 1, he gets pinned to the wall by drumsticks. Day 2, he curls up like a baby after the flag twirling disaster. Day 3, he watches Plankton completely collapse from exhaustion. And by day 4, the awful noise literally warps his face. With all these failures piling up, it's no surprise he gives up. It feels like he's just protecting himself from getting hurt even more. The Krusty Krab training video shows Squidward's resistance in a different way. Throughout this cheesy corporate video, Squidward is basically the what not to do example. He's the employee who refuses to play along with workplace culture. The narrator even directly warns the viewers that no employee wants to be a Squidward, while showing how different he is from SpongeBob, who enthusiastically follows all the rules. The difference between them is really obvious in every part of the video. During personal hygiene, SpongeBob scrubs his hands so much they disappear, while Squidward just sits in a bathroom stall reading a magazine. In the your workstation part, SpongeBob keeps everything perfectly organized with not a pickle out of place, but Squidward is napping at his register, which is all stained with ketchup, and he even has a do not disturb sign hanging from his foot. This perfectly shows how checked out he is, both physically and mentally, from his job. The most telling part is how Squidward deals with customers. Instead of following Mr. Krabs' rule that the money is always right, he tells Patrick to
Go be stupid somewhere else.
He's not just being lazy, he's actually refusing to fake enthusiasm like the Krusty Krab wants him to. When he asks about overtime pay and nobody answers him, you can see that for Squidward, work is just a transaction. Unlike SpongeBob, who completely becomes the perfect employee, Squidward keeps his emotional distance from a system he finds beneath him. All these different moments where Squidward resists come from the same place inside him. He's afraid that if he fully commits, he'll either be humiliated or lose his already shaky sense of who he is. But what makes these resistance moments so interesting is that they don't last forever. When SpongeBob secretly gets the band together behind Squidward's back, their amazing performance of Sweet Victory becomes Squidward's moment of triumph. Not because he overcame his resistance on his own, but because things changed in a way that let him succeed even though he had given up. Squidward's resistance is exactly what makes his rare wins so meaningful, because we understand how deeply skeptical and afraid he really is. When he jumps through the air at the end of the Bubble Bowl, we're not just seeing a musical success, we're seeing him briefly break free from his usual patterns of holding back. It's a glimpse of what Squidward could become if he found the courage to push through failure. Squidward keeps resisting growth because he's scared of failing and showing his vulnerable side. But through people who unexpectedly become mentors in his life, he starts facing his limitation and discovers that maybe he can change after all. Beneath all the everyday silliness of Bikini Bottom, Squidward is actually on a journey of personal growth. Despite thinking he's all sophisticated with his art, he's not exactly winning any emotional maturity awards. And here's the funny thing. Instead of learning from wise teachers teachers, Squidward gets life lessons from the most unexpected sources. His old high school rival, a fancy pet snail, and even a drawing that came to life. Though he stays pretty grumpy most of the time, these weird little encounters slowly change him. If you look closely, you can occasionally see hints of a better Squidward emerging underneath all that crankiness. Squilliam Fancy Son first shows up in Band Geese, not as a helpful guide, but as Squidward's enemy. Basically, a walking, talking reminder of everything Squidward failed to become. Their relationship flips the usual mentor thing on its head. Instead of giving Squidward advice and support, Squilliam's snobby attitude actually pushes Squidward to do better. When Squilliam calls offering Squidward the chance to have his band play at the fancy Bubble Bowl, he's not really being nice. He's setting Squidward up to fail. You can tell by his parting comment about the audience needing pain relievers. Squilliam's way of teaching Squidward is through insults, not encouragement. But here's the thing, this mean-spirited setup actually gives Squidward exactly what he needs. A kick in the pants to break out of his usual complain and give up routine. During band practice, we see something rare from Squidward. He actually sticks with it, even when drummers are shooting sticks at his face and flag twirlers are causing deadly explosions. He keeps going way longer than he normally would before quitting. When he finally breaks down crying, saying,
"You took my one chance at happiness and crushed it,"
we get to see a vulnerable side of Squidward that's usually hidden under all his snobbiness and grumpiness. This whole band experience actually changed Squidward in small ways that pop up later. When he's teaching SpongeBob art in Artist Unknown, he starts off surprisingly confident, like maybe leading that band, even for a short time, made him believe in himself more. And when he runs into Squilliam again in later episodes, he handles it differently. Instead of just panicking and making stuff up, he starts thinking ahead and planning better. It's like he quietly learned something from that first nasty encounter with his rival, even though Squilliam never meant to teach him anything. When it comes to the snail race episode, we see Squidward learning from a totally different teacher, his fancy snail, Snelly. At first, Squidward thinks he's the one in charge, totally convinced that Snelly's fancy bloodline, which he keeps calling her papers, means she'll definitely beat SpongeBob's mutt, Gary. The way Squidward brags about Snelly's breeding instead of actually training her shows what he really believes, that being born special matters more than hard work. And it's not just about the race. This is how Squidward thinks about everything, from art to social class to what makes someone valuable. The race turns into a pretty eye-opening lesson about what really matters. When Gary collapses because SpongeBob pushed him too hard in training, Snelly gives up her lead to go back and comfort him, choosing to be kind instead of winning. This completely flips the student-teacher thing around. Suddenly, Snelly is teaching Squidward about values he never seems to get. And the perfect punchline is Patrick's pet rock, Rocky, ends up winning the whole race. Talk about a reality check for Squidward's whole system of judging what's valuable. This lesson shows up in small ways throughout Squidward's story. Like in Grandma's Kisses, when SpongeBob gets made fun of for trying to act all grown up, Squidward surprisingly doesn't pile on with more teasing when SpongeBob is feeling down. It's a tiny change, but it kinda mirrors what Snelly did, choosing connection over status when it really counts. The trophy they give to Squidward Tortellini, thanks to Patrick's name mix-up, shows how this lesson stuck with Squidward. At first, he gets annoyed at Patrick getting his name wrong, like usual, but then something different happens. He actually laughs about it with SpongeBob and Patrick. This ability to find the humor in something imperfect instead of getting all angry show he's growing a little bit. We see these tiny moments of growth pop up here and there throughout the show. In Frankendoodle, we get maybe the weirdest teacher for Squidward, Doodlebob, the simple drawing SpongeBob creates that somehow comes to life and goes on a rampage. When Doodlebob attacks Squidward, slamming his head on the ground before stealing the magic pencil, it's actually a pretty deep lesson about the relationship between artists and what they create. Something that hits close to home for artsy Squidward. For someone who thinks his art is just about self-expression and doesn't need to worry about consequences, Doodlebob is basically a warning. Hey, what you create matters and can affect others, so be responsible about it. Doodlebob's crazy rampage, drawing holes for people to fall into, turning regular stuff into weapons, and even trying to erase the real SpongeBob, shows what can happen when someone has creative power, but no self-control. For Squidward, who's always trying to make great art even though his skills aren't quite there, this is a subtle wake-up call that being an artist comes with responsibilities. It's not just about making whatever you want. Your creations can affect the world around you. This lesson shows up in small ways in later episodes. In Artist Unknown, when SpongeBob turns out to be naturally talented at art and that threatens Squidward's ego, he almost sabotages SpongeBob out of jealousy, but doesn't go all the way with it. And in Patty Hype, when he tries to steal credit for SpongeBob's colorful patty idea, he's more calculating and less destructive about it. These aren't huge personality changes, but they show how the crazy Doodlebob experience left a mark on how Squidward approaches his creative side. All these random teaching moments add up, creating a foundation for those rare times when Squidward actually rises above his usual grumpy self. Like in Pizza Delivery, when he stands up for SpongeBob against the rude customer, showing he actually cares, even though he's usually so annoyed with him. Or in Just one bite when he finally admits he loves Krabby Patties, putting honesty ahead of his pride for once. And remember dying for pie when he thought SpongeBob was going to die? The way he spent that whole day with him showed there's actually some real depth and caring underneath all that crankiness. Squidward doesn't change in any big dramatic way. It's more like little lessons that slowly add up by challenging how he sees things. The influences from Squilliam, Snelly, and Doodlebob weave into who he is, creating little openings for growth that occasionally break through his grumpy shell. When he's genuinely happy, unexpectedly kind, or really satisfied with his art, we get glimpses of how these weird teachers have shaped him. They haven't completely transformed him, but they've created moments where a better version of Squidward can pop up briefly before his usual patterns take over again. Squidward meets some surprising people who end up teaching him important things along the way. As this happens, he reaches a turning point where the fake version of himself, who he's been showing everyone, starts to fall apart. This opens the door for him to really change as a person. If you're finding this content interesting, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an update. Under all that eye-rolling and grumpiness, Squidward is actually going through some pretty deep changes. There are moments when the fake front he puts up starts to crack, and he can't ignore the truth about himself anymore. These important turning points show all the contradictions that make him such a complicated character in Bikini Bottom. In just one bite, we see Squidward really change because of Krabby Patties. At first, he's totally in his comfort zone, looking down on customers who love these sandwiches. He flat out says,
It's disgusting. I hate Krabby Patties.
but when SpongeBob finds out Squidward's never even tried one, it throws Squidward into a total identity crisis. At first, Squidward tries really hard to keep up his image by refusing to try the patty SpongeBob offers him. He even goes overboard, saying stuff like,
If I were trapped at the bottom of a well for 3 years with nothing to eat but that Krabby Patty, I'd eat my own legs first.
but his problem isn't actually about how the patty tastes. It's about keeping that wall up between himself and the simple things he publicly makes fun of. The big moment happens when Squidward finally takes a tiny little bite, after loudly telling everyone that the sandwich is
The most horrible, putrid, poorly prepared, vile, unappetizing, disgusting excuse for a sandwich.
He even pretends to bury it with a little tombstone and everything. But once nobody's watching, his true feelings come out. He digs up the patty from the dirt, whispers,
Still alive.
and gobbles the whole thing down before melting into pure happiness.
Oh, so delicious. All the wasted years.
He cries. That private moment when Squidward finally gives in completely changes him. After that, he goes kind of crazy, trying to secretly order patties, eating them from the trash, and even breaking into the patty vault. The wall he worked so hard to keep up between his public image and what he actually wants has totally fallen apart. He's changed for good, even if he's the only one who knows it. In Dying for Pie, we see another big change in Squidward when he thinks SpongeBob ate a pie that's actually a bomb and only has a few hours left to live. This mix-up forces Squidward to face something really uncomfortable, that deep down, underneath all his talk about hating SpongeBob, he might actually care about him. When Squidward says,
I'm gonna make SpongeBob's final hours the best he's ever had. And this time, there's gonna be love.
it shows he's completely changing his approach. As he does all these silly activities from SpongeBob's friendship list, Squidward stops trying to protect his image and just focuses on making SpongeBob happy, even if it means looking ridiculous himself. That sunset scene really shows how much Squidward has changed when SpongeBob accidentally talks about their situation.
If I were to die right now in some sort of fiery explosion due to the carelessness of a friend, well, that would be just okay.
When Squidward breaks down crying, it's clear that all of his usual walls and defenses have completely melted away. When Squidward finds out SpongeBob never actually ate the pie, he tries to put his walls back up right away.
Why are you still here?
He snaps, like SpongeBob just being alive somehow threatens that real moment Squidward let himself have. Unlike his secret addiction to Krabby Patties, Squidward manages to back away from this emotional openness, though it definitely costs him something. In The Chaperone, we see a more subtle moment that changes things. At the end, we find out that SpongeBob walking Pearl home is actually just a wax dummy, and the real SpongeBob shows up to get it, saying,
It sure comes in handy.
This little twist shows there might be more to SpongeBob than Squidward ever realized, and hints that the relationship could be more complicated than we thought. This is why so many people connect with Squidward. His journey isn't straightforward. It's more like a circle where he keeps coming close to these truth moments, sometimes giving in to them, but often running back to his comfort zone. But each experience leaves its mark on him. The Squidward who secretly loves Krabby Patties, who actually cares about SpongeBob, even though he'd never admit it, who sometimes connects with others in real ways. This Squidward exists right alongside the grumpy cashier we usually see. What really hits home about these moments is how much we can all relate to them. Squidward isn't out there on some epic adventure or saving the world. His big moments happen when he's alone and finally has to face the truth about himself. His struggle isn't about conquering foreign lands, but about dealing with his own internal contradictions. And honestly, that's something most of us understand way better than slaying dragons or saving the universe. When Squidward drops his guard and can't hide behind his usual act anymore, he starts running into challenges, people, and situations that slowly break break down the fake image he's been holding onto. In Squidward's daily life in Bikini Bottom, he runs into all sorts of weird challenges that really test who he is. He meets unexpected friends who make him question what he believes, and enemies who often just mirror his own problems. His normal, everyday world becomes testing ground where his patience, values, and how he sees himself are constantly being put to the test. Squidward doesn't deal with epic quests or big adventures. Instead, his challenges come from everyday situations that test his values and show his weak spots. Like in Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, what starts as just a mix-up, SpongeBob and Patrick thinking Squidward's wax figure is actually him, turns into a moral test when Squidward realizes he can take advantage of them because they'll believe anything. When Squidward gets a little power over his neighbors, that's when the real test begins. He starts ordering them around, telling them to tend to my every whim and tickle my fancy on demand. This small taste of being in charge shows us who Squidward really is. When SpongeBob brings him a grape fresh from the vine, and Patrick brings a watermelon fresh from the manure fields, we see Squidward's true colors. Instead of saying thanks, he just wants more and more, making SpongeBob play a song with a tissue and throwing pie on Patrick's face when he brings exactly what Squidward asked for. When Squidward gets a taste of power, it strips away his fancy act and shows us who he really is, someone who gets petty and mean when he's in charge. What's funny is that his subjects then find a comic book about the Flying Dutchman, who haunts the seven seas because he was never put to rest. This basically hints that Squidward's unhappiness isn't because of his circumstances, but because of his own bad behavior. Chocolate with Nuts shows a different kind of challenge, one where Squidward accidentally becomes a teacher. When SpongeBob and Patrick ask how to get rich, Squidward just casually tells them entrepreneurs sell things to people. This throwaway comment kicks off their whole chocolate selling adventure, but it also shows how Squidward misses a chance to be helpful. Instead of giving them proper guidance, he sends them out into a world they don't understand, where they run into scammers and creeps. Maybe the most telling test is in The Splinter, when Squidward faces a moral choice. He sees SpongeBob is hurt, which gives him a chance to show some compassion, but instead, he uses the situation against SpongeBob by lying that
Mr. Krabs will be forced to send you home.
This shows how easily Squidward trades honesty for a bit of peace and quiet, willing to play on someone else's fears just to get a few hours to himself. These tests show a clear pattern. When Squidward has to make a moral choice, he usually takes the easy way out, or does whatever benefits him the most. But each time he messes up, there's a chance for him to learn something, since the consequences of his choices always come back to bite him, often in pretty embarrassing ways. The funny thing about Squidward's life is his relationship with the neighbors he looks down on. SpongeBob and Patrick, the very people he can't stand, often end up being his biggest helpers, though rarely in ways he actually likes. In Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, they try to help him cross over by sending him to the great beyond in a bubble, which shows they genuinely care about him, even if their methods are pretty clueless. What makes these friendships really interesting is that they're so one-sided. SpongeBob and Patrick stay loyal to Squidward even though he can't stand them. When they think they've accidentally killed him, they immediately feel bad and want to make it right.
We'll do anything you want,
SpongeBob promises the ghost, while Patrick kisses his feet, showing they truly care about Squidward underneath all their annoying behavior. Even Mr. Krabs, who mostly just cares about money, sometimes turns out to be a surprising helper. In The Splinter, when SpongeBob finally shows his infected thumb, Mr. Krabs doesn't send him home like Squidward threatened. Instead, he just quickly fixes the problem by pulling out the splinter. This practical fix is totally different from Squidward's manipulative approach, and Patrick's well-meaning but terrible attempt at playing doctor. Friends work differently around Squidward than they do in typical stories about heroes. Instead of helping him achieve his goals, his friends often step in to save him from his own worst tendencies, like when his pride or pettiness threaten to leave him completely alone. They keep trying to stay connected with him, even when he pushes them away. This creates a kind of safety net that Squidward rarely says thank you for, but often needs. Squidward's real enemies aren't outside threats, but parts of the world that challenge how he sees himself. In the episode Chocolate with Nuts, the con artist who keeps tricking SpongeBob and Patrick is actually like a mirror to what Squidward does himself, taking advantage of people's trust for his own benefit. When the con man puts out an elaborate act about being injured to get sympathy, it's really similar to how Squidward makes a big dramatic scene whenever he's slightly inconvenienced. Maybe Squidward's biggest enemy is just the gap between what he wants to be and what he really is. In Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, when he claims he has mastered all forms of art with his wax sculpture, you can see how desperately he needs others to think he's amazing. This self-deception becomes the foundation for when he takes advantage of SpongeBob and Patrick, showing that his worst enemy might just be his own inflated ego. Even the world around him seems to work against Squidward. In one episode, the bubble that carries him to the great beyond at the end really shows his attitude and ends up separating him from everyone else, leaving him all alone. A
above the water with just seagulls to hang out with. And in the Splinter, his workplace becomes like enemy territory. Squidward lies about getting hurt so he can go home early, and eventually he actually hurts himself on purpose to escape, only to find out his shift was already over anyway. These confrontations with reality, whether through con artists who trick him, neighbors who see right through his act, or situations that expose how petty he can be, are the real challenges in Squidward's story. Each time this happens, it peels back another layer of his self-deception, forcing him to briefly see who he really is before he goes right back to hiding in his comfortable bubble of make-believe. Squidward's world is like a tiny version of real life, where everyday interactions actually mean a lot. The things he cares about might seem small compared to big adventures, just wanting some peace and quiet, a little respect, or a break from annoying neighbors. But all these small moments add up to create a life of quiet frustration with occasional bright spots of connection and personal growth. Even though he rarely learns lasting lessons from these experiences, each one adds another layer to who he is, showing there's actually a complex person underneath all that grumpiness. Squidward's life is full of everyday struggles, tricky relationships, and things that remind him of his own insecurities. All of these build up to moments when his hidden fears and untapped potential finally bubble up to the surface. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you're subscribed. Behind Squidward's constant frown is a character who keeps finding himself in moments where he has to face truths he tries really hard to avoid. These turning points in his story show both what he's most afraid of and the potential for growth that he never quite fulfills. In House Fancy, we see Squidward at his most vulnerable when his longtime rival Squilliam shows up on his favorite home decorating show. When Squidward gets that unexpected call and has to listen to Squilliam bragging about his fancy gold doorknobs and jeweled toilet paper holders, he nearly loses it. That's when Squidward impulsively claims his own house is actually better, which starts his downward spiral.
I'll just tell them you're all dead in a marching band accident.
Squidward frantically tells the TV, giving himself only 2 hours to make his regular house look amazing. This panic shows how much Squidward ties his self-worth to what others think of him. When he reluctantly asks SpongeBob for help, things just keep getting worse. Paint splattered everywhere, a ripped-off toenail, and finally, that vacuum disaster that completely trashes his house. The physical destruction of Squidward's house is just like how his carefully built image falls apart. As his stuff gets sucked into the growing vacuum bag, his pretend personality is also being stripped away, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. When the vacuum finally explodes, it's the ultimate low point, with Squidward standing in the middle of both his ruined home and his shattered hopes. What makes this moment really important is how it sets up the surprise turn that follows. When Nicholas Withers sees the destruction as brilliant, avant-garde art, Squidward's biggest embarrassment suddenly becomes his greatest success. This pattern, where Squidward gets pushed to his breaking point only to find an unexpected happy ending, shows up again and again throughout the story. In That's No Lady, Squidward hits another turning point when he falls for Patricia, not realizing it's actually just Patrick dressed up. This situation forces Squidward to face parts of himself he usually keeps hidden. The episode builds tension as Squidward gets more and more desperate in his pursuit. He starts drawing romantic pictures and playing love songs on his clarinet, totally dropping his usual cool, distant attitude as he chases after his new crush. These out-of-character behaviors show a Squidward without his usual defensive, revealing a vulnerable side he normally hides behind his sarcastic attitude. Squidward's behavior is pretty over the top, right? He keeps hiding in the weirdest places, inside cabinets, behind faucets, and even in toilets, just to hit on Patricia. Every time she turns him down, it gets funnier, but also more awkward, pushing Squidward closer to facing some uncomfortable truths about himself. When he says,
They don't call me Sizzle-Lip Squid for nothing.
we get to see this whole other side of him that he usually hides behind his fancy, cultured personality. When Patricia's real identity comes to light, Squidward is totally freaked out. His reaction,
I think I need a shower.
isn't just about being fooled. It's about how he actually opened up and showed his real feelings in a situation that now makes him super embarrassed. This happens to Squidward a lot, actually. He puts himself out there, gets vulnerable, and then quickly retreats back into his shell when things get uncomfortable. In the episode Bulletin Board, Squidward faces another tough moment when someone called P*7 starts posting really harsh reviews. While SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs get worried about the bad comments about the Krusty Krab in general, Squidward actually enjoys all the negativity at first, until the criticism targets him personally. When he reads a note saying Squidward tentacles should never be allowed behind a cash register, it hits him where it hurts, and he loses his cool completely. His angry threat,
I'm gonna give you a number of contusions,
shows how his whole I don't care attitude is just an act. That calm, superior personality he tries so hard to keep up just falls apart when someone publicly criticizes him. During a midnight stakeout to catch P*7, things get really tense. It's pretty funny how Squidward refuses to answer to delicate flower on the walkie-talkie, while at the same time trying to hide his flower tattoo. This whole situation shows the two sides of Squidward that he can't seem to balance. He's actually a sensitive artist deep down, but he's always trying so hard to seem cool and sophisticated to everyone else. When it comes out that Patrick is the one behind all those notes, Squidward has another oh great moment. It's telling how he basically begs, Please, please bring back Peace Star 7 rather than joining their knitting circle. This shows that Squidward actually prefers fighting with someone than making real connections with people. He's more comfortable with conflict than opening up and being vulnerable with others. Throughout these episodes, we can see a clear pattern in how Squidward deals with things. First, something happens that challenges the image he's trying so hard to maintain. Then, as the pressure builds, his usual defense mechanisms just don't cut it anymore. Eventually, things get so intense that he can't keep up the act. His mask slips, and we get to see glimpses of the real Squidward underneath all that attitude. What's really interesting about these moments isn't just that they show Squidward's vulnerable side, but they give us little glimpses of who he could actually be if he stopped fighting against his true self. Like when he can't help smiling after being named House Fancy Prince of the Year, or how he genuinely likes Patricia before finding out who she really is, or even his honest reaction when someone criticizes him. All these moments show that underneath all that cynicism, there's a Squidward who's capable of real feelings and connections. Even though Squidward usually goes right back to his old ways after these moments, each experience leaves a small mark on it. These key moments matter because they keep giving Squidward chances to change, even if he rarely takes them. They help us see past his grumpy exterior to the potential hiding inside. The Squidward who might finally emerge if he could just accept the truths these confrontations keep showing him. In these moments, Squidward really has to face his biggest insecurities, which sets him up for a major crisis. This whole situation challenges what he thinks about himself, and could actually lead to some real change in his character. Every hero has to go through their toughest challenge, a make-or-break moment that tests what they believe in and changes them forever. In Bikini Bottom, behind all the silly jokes, Squidward goes through exactly this kind of journey. Even though he's grumpy and negative, his experiences show how even the most stubborn person can find new meaning in life by quietly sacrificing and facing their biggest fears. In Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful, Squidward deals with something that really hurts his pride. After getting unfairly ticketed for littering, he has to do community service. And of course, his rival Squilliam Fancyson shows up, bragging about having a statue built in his honor. Determined to prove he's just as good, Squidward tries to clean the entire city in just one day, which is basically impossible, especially when everyone starts dumping their trash onto his borrowed wagon. The turning point happens when his house gets replaced by a garbage copy. This is like his safe space being destroyed, the only place where Squidward could pretend to be the sophisticated artist he wants to be. Now he has to choose, keep failing on his own, or swallow his pride and get help. When he finally gives in and lets SpongeBob help him, Squidward takes his first step towards a real change. Even though SpongeBob's garbage statue still ends up embarrassing him, Squidward gets a small win when Squilliam finally gets a ticket too, something that never would have happened if Squidward hadn't kept pushing through his struggles. In the camping episode, Squidward faces a totally different challenge. The very thing he's most proud of, being skeptical about everything, actually becomes his biggest problem. After joining SpongeBob and Patrick's campout just to show off how much smarter he is, Squidward completely ignores their warnings about sea bears and does literally everything they say attracts these creatures. All those times Squidward gets attacked are basically the physical version of his stubborn refusal to listen to other people's ideas. Each attack chips away at his confidence, slowly breaking down how he sees the world. The real change happens when Squidward, all beaten up and finally humbled, jumps into SpongeBob and Patrick's protective circle, basically admitting he was wrong. When he says,
You guys saved my life!
it's more than just saying thanks. It shows Squidward has learned something important about all this suffering. He's figured out that sometimes being safe means trusting others instead of just dismissing them. And in SpongeBob You're Fired, what starts out looking like Squidward's dream come true quickly turns into his worst nightmare. As customers run away from Mr. Krabs' terrible cooking, Squidward has to face an uncomfortable truth. His workplace actually needs the very person he claimed to hate. His journey hits a turning point when he reluctantly puts on a Krabby Patty costume to rescue SpongeBob from rival restaurants. This moment where Squidward becomes a Krabby Patty is his biggest sacrifice. By literally turning into something he used to make fun of, he's giving up his own identity for something more important. When he kneels in front of SpongeBob and admits,
I hate the smell of burning Krabby Patties even more!
then he hates SpongeBob, Squidward is finally being honest with himself. He realizes he actually depends on others, which is probably the toughest lesson for someone who likes being alone. Throughout these episodes, Squidward never completely changes. Unlike typical heroes, he goes back to being his grumpy self, but each crisis leaves its mark. Tiny shifts in how he sees things that build up over time. His growth isn't about some big dramatic victory, but about having the humility to keep going despite failure over and over. Squidward's change is subtle, but it's definitely real. When he deals with false accusations, sea bear attacks, and workplace disasters, he has to face parts of himself he'd rather ignore. His need for approval, his fear of being wrong, and the fact that he reluctantly needs other people. Through all this, Squidward gains something more valuable than outside validation. Brief moments of real connection that manage to break through the walls he's built around himself. In the colorful world of Bikini Bottom, Squidward's gloomy existence reminds us that real change often doesn't come from big victories, but from being brave enough to face our own limitations and, every once in a while, letting others
other people into our lives. Squidward's challenges test his ego and how he sees himself, ultimately showing us glimpses of unexpected personal growth and moments where he actually connects with others. Subscribe to our channel if you're loving this so far. We have even better videos coming up. You know, beneath all the crazy adventures in Bikini Bottom, there's actually a pretty interesting story about an unlikely hero. Squidward, that grumpy octopus who loves art and music, goes through a lot of stuff that really tests his patience and who he is as a person. Sometimes during all this chaos, Squidward catches these little moments of actual connection and wisdom that briefly lift him out of his usual cranky self. Take that episode A Day Without Tears, for example. It all starts because Squidward gets super annoyed with SpongeBob crying so much, like 43 times before lunch. Instead of just walking away, Squidward makes a bet. If SpongeBob can stop crying until midnight, Squidward has to sleep over at his pineapple house. What seems like just Squidward trying to get SpongeBob to stop being annoying actually shows us more about who Squidward really is. Throughout the day, he tries everything to make SpongeBob cry, showing him sad sunsets, telling depressing news stories, playing sad music, even making up a story about a lost fish. He's pretty clever about it, but it also shows how badly he wants to keep SpongeBob's emotions at arm's length. When midnight finally hits and the bet ends, something surprising happens. As SpongeBob lets out all of those held back tears and floods the town, Squidward starts crying too. The last scene shows him sobbing while SpongeBob comforts him, saying,
That's alright, let it out. You can cry all you want, you're among friends here.
Let me rewrite that paragraph in a more conversational, simple tone. This moment where Squidward breaks down and cries is actually pretty special. For once, he drops his I'm better than everyone act and just feels something real. Though he'd never admit it, letting those emotions out gives him something valuable. A rare moment where he connects with someone who accepts his true feelings without judging him. In that episode, Squidward's School for Grown-Ups, Squidward gets an unusual chance when Patrick randomly grows a beard, which is actually just a sleeping sea urchin. Squidward sees this as his opportunity to finally have a sophisticated friend who might appreciate all the fancy stuff he likes. Squidward gets surprisingly excited about being Patrick's mentor. He takes him to art museums, fancy restaurants, and even the opera, thinking he's finally found someone who gets him. We rarely see this side of Squidward, how much he wants a friend who shares his interests. The trouble comes when SpongeBob disguises himself as an opera singer and performs a heartfelt song about friendship. Patrick cries, which wakes up the sea urchin and reveals the beard wasn't real. Squidward has to face a tough truth. His sophisticated friend was never real, and his attempt to share his culture failed. But even in this failure, Squidward wins something small. For a little while, he got to experience the joy of sharing what he loves without being laughed at. Even though people throw food at him when he criticizes SpongeBob's performance, Squidward got a taste of what life could be like if people actually valued his artistic interests instead of making fun of him. This brief experience, getting to be a real mentor, stays with Squidward, like a little treasure he keeps from an otherwise disappointing adventure. Even though he goes back to being alone, he now has the memory of what could be possible, having a friend who shares his sophisticated interests instead of just annoying him. In SpongeBob's big birthday blowout, Squidward finds himself in a weird spot, helping plan a surprise party for someone he claims to hate. When Sandy puts him in charge of decorating, Squidward's ego shows up right away.
Of course! I didn't give myself all those awards for nothing.
As the crazy party planning goes on, Squidward keeps losing his dignity. His paintings get damaged, nobody follows his artistic vision, and people question his authority. When Bubble Bass subjects him to the humiliation of super pit power, basically an armpit attack, Squidward literally melts into a puddle. The party gets even worse when the walls start falling down and guests go wild. But surprisingly, in the middle of all this chaos, Squidward doesn't give up. Instead of just leaving, he takes dramatic action, disguising himself as a killer Krabby Patty to save SpongeBob from competing restaurant owners. This selfless act, though the episode doesn't make a big deal about it, shows a huge change in Squidward. He literally becomes what he claims to hate, a Krabby Patty, to help someone he claims to despise, SpongeBob. The costume works as both a disguise and a symbol. Squidward temporarily gives up his identity for something more important. When Squidward gets on his knees and says to SpongeBob,
Please come back and be the fry cook again,
he's doing something pretty brave. Admittedly, he needs help. His honest confession,
you know, I hate you, right? Well, I hate the smell of burning Krabby Patties even more.
Keeps it real while acknowledging they need each other. He stays true to himself while admitting they're stuck together. This hard-earned lesson, sometimes we actually need exactly what we claim to dislike, is Squidward's biggest win. Even though he goes back to being grumpy almost immediately, he carries this understanding with him, having briefly stepped outside his comfort zone to do something for the greater good. Throughout these episodes, we see Squidward growing not in huge dramatic ways, but in tiny steps. It's like someone learning to sword fight through thousands of small adjustments rather than one epic training montage. Squidward improves through his
constant struggles with the crazy world around him. What makes these small victories really matter is how much they cost him. Unlike SpongeBob, who's naturally happy, or Patrick, who's too simple to worry about life's big questions, Squidward has to fight against his own nature just to grow a little bit. Every time he shows vulnerability, connects with someone, or does something selfless, he's battling not just the situation, but also his own deep-rooted negativity. These hard-fought moments where he rises above himself, though they don't last long, add up over time. They suggest that sometimes being a hero isn't about completely changing who you are, but about quietly keeping on trying, even reluctantly, to be better than your usual self. Squidward's brief moments of personal growth get quickly washed away once he's back home, where he slips right back into resisting any change. If you're still with us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. The way we return home after facing challenges often says more about us than the adventure itself. For Squidward, our grumpy artist neighbor who loves his clarinet, these moments of coming back home really show his biggest flaws and how stubbornly he fights against changing. In The Lost Mattress, Squidward takes credit for a gift he didn't actually buy, only to find out that his little lie has serious consequences. When Mr. Krabs falls into a cash coma after hearing his money-filled old mattress was thrown out, Squidward faces a scary warning from a cop. If Mr. Krabs doesn't pull through, you're going to jail. His desperate attempt to blame others,
It was SpongeBob's fault.
shows not just his selfishness, but a deeper fear that he's not good enough. His art dreams remain unfulfilled. Nobody appreciates his music. By avoiding responsibility, he's protecting his fragile ego, telling himself his mediocrity is because of bad luck, not his own shortcomings. Unlike SpongeBob, who jumps into challenges with excitement, Squidward tries to manipulate his friends at the dump.
You two quietly go in there, remove the mattress from the guard worm without waking the worm.
When the worm keeps attacking him instead, Squidward just can't adapt. While SpongeBob would learn from his mistakes, Squidward just doubles down, disguising his friends as choice cuts to distract the worm, showing how he can't change his approach even when it clearly isn't working. Squidward's journey ends not with personal growth, but with him still being chased by the guard worm, suggesting he's stuck in a circle of the same patterns that got him in trouble to begin with. This is totally different from Mr. Krabs, who immediately reconnects with his purpose when he recovers, saying,
Oh, money, I promise I'll never leave you alone again.
while Mr. Krabs' obsession with money seems shallow, it helps him process experiences and come home with a clearer sense of what matters to him, something Squidward just can't seem to do. Squidward's School for Grown-Ups shows another way Squidward fights against changing. When Patrick suddenly grows a beard, which is actually just a sleeping sea urchin, Squidward sees a chance to finally have someone who appreciates his fancy tastes.
It is glaringly clear that you learned nothing today about how to be mature.
He tells SpongeBob with a dismissive eye roll, showing both his belief that he's sophisticated and his desperate need for someone to validate him. Behind Squidward's mentorship of Patrick is something he rarely admits. He's incredibly lonely. While SpongeBob makes friends by accepting people as they are, Squidward can only connect with Patrick when Patrick seems to be like him. This "I'll only like you if you're like me" attitude shows why he can't grow. He can't even accept himself for who he really is. When SpongeBob's opera singing makes Patrick cry, waking up the sea urchin and revealing that Patrick's maturity was fake all along, Squidward's fantasy world crumbles. When he yells at the audience,
I'm ashamed and disgusted by you people.
he's showing how he refuses to accept reality. When everyone throws food at him, Squidward literally feels the world rejecting his whole outlook on life. Unlike Plankton in The Algae's Always Greener, who experiences Mr. Krabs' life and comes back appreciating his own situation,
Holographic meatloaf, my favorite.
Squidward can't rethink his beliefs. Plankton's journey works because he lets his experiences change him, and he's brave enough to admit that he was wrong, something Squidward just can't seem to do. In Rodeo Days, Squidward's fear of change hits an all-time high when he's unwilling to be carried to Texas in a bubble.
SpongeBob, the next time you invite me to one of your slumber parties, I'm calling the cops.
He yells, showing his biggest fear, losing control. Unlike SpongeBob, who jumps into new situations with excitement, or Sandy, who confidently moves between different worlds, Squidward needs his familiar routine. His house isn't just a place to live, but a mental safe space where he can keep pretending he's better than everyone else. Every time he's forced to leave home, this pretense gets threatened, exposing how inadequate he feels in situations he can't control. When the bubble reaches Texas, Squidward appears as a real sea creature in the real world. It's ironic that his appearance completely transforms, while inside he remains exactly the same. While Sandy celebrates bringing her worlds together through song, critters that you gotta wrangle, boots with spurs that jingle jangle, that's a rodeo. Squidward can only respond with horror to anything unfamiliar. This inability to blend different experiences explains why Squidward never really changes. He keeps transformative experiences separate from who he really is, rather than letting them change him. When Sandy loses the rodeo after SpongeBob messes messes things up but still saves him from the bullfrog, her advice,
Next time, leave the rodeos to me.
comes from growth rather than bitterness. She keeps her identity while accepting her friend's mistakes, showing a vulnerability that Squidward always avoids. These journeys show us a character stuck in a loop of missed chances. What makes Squidward different from characters who actually grow is how strongly he resists being vulnerable. His fear of not being good enough, his need to control everything, and his inability to make real connections create a protective shell that keeps his experiences from truly changing him. The few moments when Squidward shows tiny hints of growth, like when he gets excited about teaching Patrick to be sophisticated, never last long. They can't survive the pressure of everyday life. This shows that real change needs more than just unusual experiences. It needs a willingness to be vulnerable that Squidward just doesn't have. His circular journeys matter exactly because they show the opposite of heroic transformation. The reality that many people, despite going through extraordinary things, stay basically the same. Whether he's being chased by a guard worm, getting food thrown at him by an opera audience, or being carried to and from Texas in a bubble, Squidward always ends up right back where he started, showing how stubborn our true nature can be even when crazy things happen to us. In the colorful world of Bikini Bottom, Squidward's resistance to growth provides a necessary balance to SpongeBob's endless optimism and ability to adapt. His journeys remind us that coming home after challenges doesn't automatically change us, and that maybe the most honest way to understand human nature is to recognize how many of us, just like Squidward, repeatedly fail the final test of letting our experiences truly change who we are. Despite fighting change, Squidward's journey reveals small cracks forming in his emotional walls. Those rare moments when he lets his guard down suggest that even the most stubborn squid might be slowly changing after all. At the Krusty Krab, where nobody's really living their dream, Squidward's not exactly the poster child for personal growth, but he does change, just in small ways, not big dramatic ones. Take the Crabborg episode. This is where we start to see Squidward become a bit different. When SpongeBob comes up with that crazy idea that Mr. Krabs might be a robot, Squidward brushes him off at first, as usual. But then, something interesting happens. He actually asks SpongeBob,
What did these robots in the movie look like?
He's not just tolerating SpongeBob anymore. He's actually getting involved. Things get real when Squidward and SpongeBob start questioning Mr. Krabs. Squidward's got this How to Torture book and a hammer, and he's breaking Mr. Krabs' kitchen appliances. He's risking his job and his dignity, which is a big deal for someone who usually plays it safe. When Mr. Krabs breaks down crying over his broken appliances, it's a pretty powerful moment. Squidward sees his boss showing real emotion, which makes him question how he sees the world. It's not just about whether Mr. Krabs is a robot. It's about connecting with others and realizing there's more going on beneath the surface than Squidward thought. For Squidward, this is actually pretty risky emotionally. He spent years building walls between himself and the craziness of the Krusty Krab. By joining SpongeBob's wild robot investigation, he's letting his guard down a little bit. In another episode, The Gift of Gum, we see Squidward handling the weirdness differently. He's not just dismissing everything anymore. He's developed a more complex way of dealing with the nonsense around him. The big moment isn't dramatic at all. It's when he's just sweeping up the broken kitchen appliances. There's this tiny pause where he seems to realize something. It's not just him giving up. It's him understanding what he does affects others. Squidward's growth happens in these tiny moments. When he asks one more question, listens for a second longer, or sees the humanity in someone else. He's not becoming a totally different person, just letting tiny cracks form in his emotional walls. As he gets ready to face Mr. Krabs' anger, there's something new in him. Not exactly hope, but a kind of awareness. Squidward has moved beyond just surviving to actually participating in life. Even if it's messy, it's a small shift, but meaningful. The quiet bravery of someone finally showing up in their own life. Deep down, Squidward's changing on the outside. He's slowly breaking down those emotional walls he built around himself. Unlike typical stories where the hero has some big victory moment, Squidward's growth happens in tiny glimpses when he lets his guard down and stops pretending not to care. In the end, Squidward doesn't save Bikini Bottom or anything dramatic like that. He does something that matters more to him personally. He gets a brief taste of what life could be like if he allowed himself to be more open and engaged. This small shift helps Squidward understand himself better. If you're liking this video so far, then don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. In the crazy world of Bikini Bottom, where everything's always wild, Squidward kind of hangs back and watches from the sidelines. He doesn't have those big movie moment breakthroughs. Instead, he grows in these tiny ways that you might miss if you're not paying attention. Little shifts in how he sees things. Take the Goo Goo Gas episode, for example. When Plankton turns everyone into babies, most characters would freak out, but Squidward, he just observes everything going crazy around him. He's not checking out, he's actually engaging with the world in his own way. Or in Sharks vs. Pods, Squidward joins a dance group. Pretty surprising for someone like him. When SpongeBob thinks the showdown means fighting, Squidward sets him straight.
A dance troupe, you numbskull!
He cuts through all the confusion. These moments aren't about Squidward saving the day, they're about something smaller, but just as important. Staying true to yourself in a world that's constantly trying to pull you into its craziness. While others get caught up in wild situations, Squidward keeps some distance. Not because he's cold, but because he understands his own boundaries. Squidward's wisdom isn't loud, it's quiet. He can look at total chaos and see what's really going on underneath. When everyone else is freaking out or changing, Squidward stays steady. He reminds us that sometimes you understand things better by stepping back and watching instead of jumping right in. It's not that Squidward doesn't care. Actually, he feels things deeply. When he joins that dance group or explains something clearly to SpongeBob, we get little glimpses of his deeper emotion. He's just picky about when he decides to get involved. What's cool about Squidward's growth is how subtle it is. He doesn't suddenly become a completely different person. Instead, he just gets a clearer sense of who he is and how to deal with the constant craziness of Bikini Bottom. His changes are internal. You might miss them if you're not really paying attention. In a world where everyone's expected to make big dramatic moves, Squidward offers something different, staying true to himself. He shows there's strength in watching, understanding, and knowing when to step in and when to step back. His journey isn't about overcoming huge challenges. It's about keeping his sanity in a world gone mad. This is the deepest kind of wisdom, the quiet kind that doesn't show off or need applause. It's just there, a calm spot in all the craziness. Squidward doesn't change Bikini Bottom. He changes how he deals with it. He finds meaning in those little moments between reactions, in how he navigates the constant weirdness. What he gains from his experiences isn't something you can hold. It's something better, understanding how to be himself in a world that rarely makes sense. His story reminds us that growth isn't always about those big, dramatic moments of change. Sometimes it's about those small shifts that happen when we actually pay attention to the world around us. In the end, Squidward's story shows us the quiet heroism of staying true to yourself. It's about finding beauty in watching rather than doing, finding meaning in holding back sometimes, and finding wisdom in those moments when we choose to just be ourselves, completely and honestly.
Squidward gave up on meaning a long time ago, and Mr. Krabs never stopped chasing it. He just put a price tag on it.
Mr. Krabs might seem like a cheap, money-loving crab with a pirate laugh and a fast food empire, but there's more hiding under that shell. Behind the cash register and constant talk about profits is someone shaped by fear, pride, and the pain of his past. Mr. Krabs is fighting to hold on to what little he's built in a world that never gave him much to begin with. His story is about survival, control, and what happens when greed becomes a shield. So, polish your doubloons and let's dive into the story of Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs lives in a world where one thing matters more than anything else: money. He wakes up thinking about money. He sleeps dreaming about it. Everything in his life, his job, his choices, even his relationships, is built around the Krusty Krab and how much profit it makes. He's a man trapped inside his own obsession with saving and earning every last penny. In Le Big Switch, Mr. Krabs swaps SpongeBob for a high-end chef to save money and look more luxurious. But he completely misses the point. The Krusty Krab's value isn't in fancy plates and expensive silverware. It's in the passion of its workers. Without SpongeBob, the restaurant collapses. Mr. Krabs is forced to sell everything he owns, including his dignity. But even after hitting rock bottom, he doesn't reflect. He doesn't grow. He's just relieved when SpongeBob returns with a crowd of loyal customers. It's a temporary fix. The deeper problem, his obsession with money, remains untouched. In There Will Be Grease, we see how easily Mr. Krabs is seduced by a new source of profit. He and Plankton turn toxic grease into everything juice, a miracle product they sell to everyone. It's the same greed in a new form. At first, things go well. Mr. Krabs gets rich again, but the product starts causing harm, and the public turns on them. Instead of taking responsibility, Mr. Krabs blames Plankton. Again, the pattern repeats. Chase the money, ignore the consequences, and learn nothing. In Krabby Road, Mr. Krabs turns the Krusty Krab into a fortress, not because he's running a dangerous business, but because he's terrified of losing the Krabby Patty formula. That formula is everything to him. It proves he won. It proves he's smarter than Plankton. It proves that all of his obsession, all of his cutting corners and chasing pennies, actually led to something valuable. So, he guards it like it's his soul. He sets traps, questions everyone's loyalty, and refuses to let anyone get too close. What's shocking is how far he's willing to go. He joins a rock band, not for fun, not for music, but just to spy on Plankton, who's disguised himself as a band manager. Mr. Krabs humiliates himself without a second thought, because the fear of losing the formula is bigger than his pride. That's the core of his world. Constant fear disguised as confidence. He's surrounded by people who care about him, but he's too busy gripping a piece of paper to notice. And the worst part is, no one questions it. His paranoia, his greed, his isolation. It's all just business as usual. But if you look close, you see a man who's built his life on winning one fight and now doesn't know how to live without it. Mr. Krabs' greed traps him in a cycle where every mistake leads to more desperation. He sees relationships in terms of cost and benefit. He values loyalty only when it doesn't interfere with profit.
He may care about SpongeBob, but only after business is secure. And yet, Mr. Krabs doesn't come off as a true villain. He's something more familiar, more uncomfortable. You get the sense that maybe, a long time ago, he was softer, maybe even idealistic. But over time, chasing profits became survival, and survival became habit. Now everything is measured in dollars, even kindness has a price tag. He doesn't waste time on feelings unless they can be turned into business. It's not that he hates people, he just doesn't see much use in anything that can't be bought, sold, or locked in a safe. When he looks at others, he sees risk. When he looks at himself, he sees a brand to protect. That's why he clings so tightly to the formula, to his restaurant, to his routines. They're the only things he fully trusts. Somewhere along the way, the man and the money got tangled up. Whatever used to be underneath, the father, the friend, the dreamer, it's buried under ledgers and alarms. Maybe it's still in there, but even if it is, he's forgotten how to show it. Mr. Krabs built a life on fear and fortune, but when the world stops playing by his rules, even money can't save him. Mr. Krabs has lived most of his life by one belief: protect the formula, protect the money, and everything else will take care of itself. This idea has shaped how he sees the world. People are either threats, tools, or walking wallets. His routine is strict. His trust is thin, and his comfort zone is made of greed, control, and a cash register that sings. For a long time, it works. He keeps Plankton away. He keeps SpongeBob loyal. He keeps the Krusty Krab running. But eventually, something changes. In Plankton's army, the change starts with a strange sight. Dozens of Planktons walking into the Krusty Krab, all marching in sync. For years, Mr. Krab has fought the same enemy. Plankton the small, Plankton the pathetic, Plankton the loser who always fails. But now Plankton has backup. He's not alone, and he's not playing games. He brings in his entire family, a swarm of tiny but unified minds, all working together to get what he never could get on his own. For the first time, Mr. Krabs is being outmaneuvered. Mr. Krabs is used to holding all the power. He sets the rules. But when Plankton arrives with something new, cooperation, unity, a real strategy, Mr. Krabs doesn't have a clear answer. He tries brute force. He tries outsmarting. But it's not working. The rules of the game are changing, and that's where the fear sets in. It's not just about losing the formula anymore. It's about losing control. Then there's Lame and Fortune. At first, Mr. Krabs is laughing. A crate full of fortune cookies just falls into the Krusty Krab, and SpongeBob starts handing them out. Harmless, right? Just a silly marketing trick. But then, the fortunes start coming true. One customer becomes rich. Another finds love. Suddenly, the Krusty Krab is full, and Mr. Krabs is hooked. He sees a new chance to make even more money, but Plankton sees something else. He replaces the fortunes with lies, telling customers that the Krusty Krab is cursed, dangerous, and that the Chum Bucket is the only safe place to eat. And it works. Customers run away in fear. They stop trusting the Krabby Patties. They stop trusting him. Mr. Krabs, for once, is facing an attack on his reputation. And for a man who built his identity on being the success story, this is far worse. The real danger is public doubt. Plankton spreads fear, and suddenly the Krusty Krab loses its place in people's minds. And Mr. Krabs is left chasing it, desperate, scared, and out of his depth. The world is changing around Mr. Krabs. The tools he relied on, cheap tricks, tight fists, endless suspicion, aren't working anymore. What's being asked of him is something much harder. He has to adapt. He has to step outside his own patterns. For years, he's believed that as long as he holds onto the formula, everything else will be fine. But now, the formula isn't enough. People don't just want food, they also want meaning, safety, trust, and Mr. Krabs has no idea how to give that, because he never learned how to value it. What makes this moment powerful is that it challenges his core belief system. He's not a man who likes risk, unless there's a guaranteed reward. He doesn't do things unless he sees a profit. But here, the reward is uncertain. The future is unknown. He's being asked to make choices that don't have dollar signs attached, to trust people he normally sees as liabilities. And yet, as shaken as he is, he doesn't walk away. He reacts, he panics, he scrambles, but he does act. In both episodes, Mr. Krabs takes the threat seriously. Even if his instincts are messy and flawed, he doesn't ignore what's happening. That tells us something important. Deep down, he knows this is bigger than a single battle. This is where the journey begins. The safe little world Mr. Krabs built for himself, a world where the only enemy was a tiny green pest and the only goal was more money, is breaking apart. The question now is not whether he'll fight, it's whether he'll change. Mr. Krabs finally sees his old ways are failing, but when change knocks, he slams the door and locks it. Stay tuned and subscribe. When the world starts to change around Mr. Krabs, his first instinct is to pull back. He clings to the things that make him feel safe: his money, his power, and the tight grip he keeps on both. Even when others around him try to help or point toward a better path, he resists. Change is terrifying to him, not because he doesn't understand it, but because it threatens the one thing he values above all: control. This resistance assistance is shown clearly in the lost mattress. When SpongeBob and Squidward see that Mr. Krabs is suffering from back pain, they buy him a brand new mattress out of kindness. They don't ask, they just help. But Mr. Krabs doesn't react with gratitude. He panics. The old mattress, it turns out, was hiding all of his money, and instead of calmly explaining that, he lashes out. He accuses them of robbing him and spirals into grief. Even though he's in pain every night, he refuses to accept the new mattress or the gesture behind it. What mattered more to him was that no one touched his safe zone without permission. His pride and paranoia matter more than his well-being. SpongeBob eventually recovers the money, but Mr. Krab never thanks him. He learns nothing from the experience. The discomfort was real, but he'd rather live with it than give up control. A similar moment happens in Born Again Krabs, where Mr. Krabs nearly dies after eating a spoiled patty. For a moment, something breaks open in him. He returns from his brush with death, promising to be a better person. He gives away free food. He treats SpongeBob with kindness. For once, he seems to understand that life isn't all about money. But that clarity doesn't last. The minute he feels safe again, the fear disappears. And so does the change. He reverts. He kisses his cash register, reclaims his greed, and acts as if nothing happened. It's not that the moment didn't matter. It did. He just chose not to carry it forward. The idea of truly changing, of living differently, is too much. He comes back into the one identity he knows, the greedy boss. Then, in selling out, Mr. Krabs does what he's always talked about. He sells the Krusty Krab for massive profit and retires. He finally gets what he thinks he wants: peace, comfort, and money in the bank. But very quickly, he starts to realize that retirement makes him feel useless. He's restless, aimless, and when he sees that the new corporate owners are running the Krusty Krab smoothly without him, he can't take it. The restaurant is cleaner and more profitable, but none of that matters to him. He doesn't feel needed. He doesn't feel like himself. So he storms back, forcing himself into a job he already gave up, just to feel in control again. It's not about the money anymore. Without the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs doesn't know who he is, and that truth scares him more than anything. Across these episodes, Mr. Krabs keeps getting chances to change, but he never takes them. People try to help him. Life pushes him in new directions, and every time, he backs away. He sticks to what he knows: his money, his rules, his routines. He won't say it out loud, but it shows. When someone offers something better, he finds a reason to reject it. When life gives him a second chance, he throws it away, only because he doesn't want to let go. He doesn't scream or fight it. He just slides back into his old ways. That's what makes it worse. It looks quiet on the outside, but inside, he's stuck. He tells himself he's being smart, being careful, but really he's scared. Scared that if he stops chasing money, if he steps away from the Krusty Krab, there won't be anything left. That without all of it, maybe he's nothing. So he holds on, even if it hurts him, even if it keeps him small. Mr. Krabs keeps rejecting the change out of fear. But what if the real reason isn't in letting go, but in who never lets go of him? Mr. Krabs doesn't take advice. He barely listens to reason. He built his world on instinct, survival, and an obsession with never being broke again. So when things start falling apart, when his plans fail, his money disappears, or his pride takes a hit, he doesn't turn to books, experts, or speeches. But there is someone who sticks around through all of it. Someone he doesn't always respect, but quietly depends on more than he'll ever admit: SpongeBob. SpongeBob isn't there to teach him or correct. He doesn't challenge Mr. Krabs with words. He does it simply by being who he is. In Hot Cross Nuts, Mr. Krabs throws himself into a new business plan, putting Sandy in charge of a popular new menu item that ends up outshining the Krabby Patty. The restaurant explodes with success, and SpongeBob is left behind, forgotten in his own kitchen. He doesn't complain. He doesn't fight for credit. He just quietly leaves. Mr. Krabs finds him outside roasting a single patty over a trash fire. Humble, lonely, and completely out of place. That image rattles something in him. Not because SpongeBob said anything, but because he didn't. For someone so loud, SpongeBob's silence speaks volumes. It's not a guilt trip. It's a reminder. All the money in the world doesn't matter if you lose the people who care about the work. There's a similar moment in Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. Mr. Krabs, thinking he's one step ahead of Plankton, leaves the Krabby Patty formula exposed. What saves the day is SpongeBob, patiently walking the imposter through the art of making a patty, step by step, not because he suspects anything, but because that's just how he is. Detailed, generous, proud of what he knows. Watching that unfold, you can see it. Mr. Krabs knows who really holds the place together. Not the formula, not the branding. It's the weird little sponge who never phones it in, who gives 100% even when no one's looking. That kind of loyalty can't be bought, and Krabs knows it. In The Googly Artiste, Patrick becomes an accidental art celebrity after putting googly eyes on patties, and Mr. Krabs, of course, sees dollar signs. He pushes the trend, turning Squidward into a personal assistant and hijacking the kitchen. But things spin out of control. SpongeBob and Patrick never fight for credit or power. They just go along, helping where they can. When Mr. Krabs sees customers lining up and Patrick reaping all the money, he doesn't explode. He he panics. Not because he's left out of the cash flow, but because once again, things move forward without him. And the ones keeping everything running? The same people he barely sees as more than tools on a payroll. This is how change enters Mr. Krabs' life. Not through big speeches or lessons, but through quiet, repeated contrast. SpongeBob doesn't lecture him. He doesn't try to change him. But he is the example Mr. Krabs can't escape. Always working, always kind, always showing up. And as much as Mr. Krabs pretends not to notice, he does. He sees it every time SpongeBob forgives his mistakes. Every time he puts care into a simple task. Every time he chooses people over profit. SpongeBob never demands growth from Mr. Krabs, but his presence makes it harder for Krabs to stay the same. In every disaster, every scam gone wrong, every failed shortcut, it's SpongeBob who's still there. Not for the paycheck, not out of fear, but out of something Mr. Krabs doesn't quite understand. Belief. And slowly, whether he likes it or not, that belief starts to get under his shell. It doesn't fix him overnight, but it keeps him from giving up, from completely losing himself. Sometimes, the most powerful influence is the one standing behind you when everything else falls apart. SpongeBob's quiet loyalty slowly makes Mr. Krabs question his old ways, but soon, the world pushes him into situations where money and control are no longer enough. But in a few key moments, these walls don't hold. He gets pushed, sometimes willingly, sometimes not, into situations where his usual tricks can't help him. These are the moments when he crosses the line between the safe world he built and something unfamiliar, something he can't fully control or undo. Take Krabs a la mode. When the Krusty Krab turns into a frozen wasteland thanks to plankton sabotage, Mr. Krabs reacts the way he always does. Panic, blame others, refuse to spend money. But the cold doesn't care. It spreads. Business dries up, and suddenly he's in real danger of shutting down. For a man who never changes unless forced, what happens next is rare. He adapts. He turns the frozen Krusty Krab into an ice-themed restaurant, going along with SpongeBob's creative ideas of turning crisis into something new. It's the first time in a while we see him working with change instead of against it. He doesn't love it, but he goes through with it. The fear of loss pulls him across the threshold, and though he tries to act like he's still in control, it's clear he's no longer in familiar waters. In R, the change is more emotional. Mr. Krabs starts with a lie, tricking SpongeBob and Patrick into a fake treasure hunt for his own amusement. But when the fake map turns out to be real, something clicks. He stops playing and starts obsessing. He ditches logic and loses patience, chasing a fantasy of riches buried in the sand. And in doing so, he drags himself into a version of reality he's not ready for. He becomes aggressive, unstable, and blind to anything but gold. His usual identity, smart, tough, greedy, but in control, falls apart. By the time he finds the treasure chest, he's sweaty, desperate, and alone. There's no reward inside, just a broken idea of who he thought he was. What makes this episode powerful is that we see him become someone who would risk everything for a myth and get nothing back. Then there's Shell of a Man. Mr. Krabs gets invited to his Navy reunion, but feels embarrassed by how soft and civilian he's become. He forces SpongeBob to pretend to be him so he won't have to face it, but the longer he hides, the more uncomfortable he becomes. He finally shows up at the reunion, not in a uniform, but in a bathrobe, literally stripped of his image. He expects ridicule. What he gets is the opposite. His old friends laugh, welcome him, and don't care about the tough guy act. They care about him. That moment, though awkward, is honest. For once, Mr. Krabs walks into a space without money, armor, or status, just himself. It's a small step, but a real one. These moments matter because they strip away what Mr. Krabs depends on. He steps into a place where being clever, greedy, or loud doesn't save him. Sometimes he adapts, sometimes he breaks down, but he can't unsee what happens there. It's not a clean shift. He doesn't transform overnight, but something is different. The Krusty Krab still exists. The formula is still locked away, but a crack has formed, and the man behind the shell has seen what happens when that shell doesn't work. In each of these episodes, Mr. Krabs leaves his safety zone, whether it's a physical space like the Krusty Krab or an emotional space like pride, and enters something that forces him to feel vulnerable. That's the point of no return. Even if he pretends like nothing changed afterward, the audience sees the truth. For a moment, he wasn't the boss. He was just a person trying to survive a world that didn't follow his rules. When Mr. Krabs steps outside his comfort zone, he starts to lose the tools that once made him powerful. But the real test comes when he has to face what happens after the fall. As always, hit the subscribe button for more videos like these. After Mr. Krabs crosses into unfamiliar territory, where money doesn't fix everything and control slips out of reach, he finds himself stumbling through a series of situations where the rules are different. The challenges he faces aren't loud battles. They're slow, quiet shifts in power. trust, and relevance. He's tested not just by problems, but by people, and what they do when he's no longer in control. In SpongeBob's place, the usual rhythm of the Krusty Krab breaks when SpongeBob, worn down by Mr. Krabs' constant pushing, decides to cook from home. He just wants a little peace, but the second SpongeBob steps away, something strange happens. The customers follow him. They leave the Krusty Krab because it no longer feels special, and Mr. Krabs, instead of listening, tries to fight it. He copies SpongeBob's voice, wears his uniform, and tries to fake the same magic. He even surrounds SpongeBob's house with molten lava to keep people from leaving. None of it works. And that's what hurts him most. Not just the money, though he hates losing that too, but the realization that the one thing that he thought was fully his restaurant, doesn't actually work without someone else's heart behind it. In the end, he doesn't apologize, but he does something just as surprising. He changes the name of the restaurant to include SpongeBob's, because even he can't deny who makes the place what it is. That small act says more than any speech. He's beginning to let go of the belief that he alone is the reason things succeed. In the Krabby Chronicle, Mr. Krabs turns a failing newspaper into his next big scheme. He puts SpongeBob in charge of writing, but quickly pushes him toward making up wild stories, because fake drama sells. SpongeBob is uncomfortable, but eager to please. The stories get worse. People get hurt, but Krabs only sees the growing stack of coins, until SpongeBob finally writes about him, printing out the kind of harsh, made-up headlines Mr. Krabs encouraged from the start. Now the town turns on him. Customers riot. Chaos breaks out, and Krabs, who built his entire empire on a tight grip and clean public image, is left sobbing on the floor. The damage finally came home. It's the first time he sees what it's like to lose everything he values: reputation, control, and trust, by his own hand. And yet, even here, he can't fully admit fault. He doesn't grow wiser. He just breaks a little more. The cracks get deeper. Then there's the Goob Father. This time, Mr. Krabs starts off strong. He creates a new treat, Patty Whips, that become a huge success. But a rival steps in. By simply doing it better, the goofy goober business begins drawing people away with smiles, fun, and kindness, things Krabs rarely considers part of running a restaurant. He sees this not as a sign to improve, but as a personal attack. He responds by going full war mode. He hires fake bodyguards, turns the Krusty Krab into a fortress, escalates everything until he's completely unrecognizable. But the truth is simple: he lost, because someone else gave people what he wouldn't. And when it's over, all he has left is the wreckage of what he built. The Krusty Krab doesn't grow stronger from the fight. It gets smaller, quieter, and Mr. Krabs, worn out and exposed, starts to realize that winning isn't always about protecting what's yours. Sometimes it's about knowing when to let things change. And then there's one Krabs trash. A small story, but a deep one. Mr. Krabs sells an old soda drinking hat to SpongeBob, then finds out it's worth a fortune. He wants it back, but instead of just offering more money, he lies. He fakes a ghost story, scares SpongeBob, and sends him on a fake quest to bury the cursed item. When that doesn't work, he digs up a grave, literally, just to prove a point. It backfires horribly. He's chased by skeletons, humiliated, and left empty-handed. He sees, for a brief moment, how low he's willing to go, just to feel like he's still in control. And once again, the cost becomes his own dignity. Each of these episodes strips something away from him: the trust of a loyal employee, the loyalty of his customers, the belief that success always means being the one in charge. He loses small battles, yes, but the real struggle is internal. Piece by piece, the world is showing him that his way, the tight grip, the shortcuts, the obsession with winning, doesn't work anymore. And worse, it's hurting the people around him. The ones who never asked for more money, just more respect. The ones who stayed even when he didn't deserve it. And what does Mr. Krab do at the end of all this? He doesn't have a big moment of truth. He doesn't break down in front of SpongeBob and beg for forgiveness. That's not who he is. But he does change. Quietly, awkwardly, and only a little. He adds someone else's name to the building. He stands in silence when the crown turns on him. He lowers his voice when he sees that loyalty, not greed, saved him again. He doesn't become a better man overnight, but he becomes a little more honest, even if only with himself. Losing control didn't break Mr. Krabs, but what came after, the quiet moments when no one was watching, started to show him who he really is. There are moments when Mr. Krabs stands just outside something he doesn't want to face, an uncomfortable truth, a part of himself he's tried to ignore, or a world that no longer plays by his rules. They're quiet steps towards something more personal, moments when pride cracks, when fear creeps in, and when the next choice feels heavier than the last. In Frozen Face-Off, Bikini Bottom is caught up in a race through snow and danger for $1 million prize. Mr. Krabs joins, because he can't resist the thought of easy riches. What starts as fun becomes bitter. He gets stuck, frozen in place, buried under the thing he chased. At one point, he ends up locked in a cave, cold, alone, and faced with the one thing he hates most: being helpless. It's not a joke anymore. He digs through the ice with his claws, grumbling, panicking. Not out of physical fear, but fear fear of being forgotten. The money feels far away now. The crowd is gone. In that frozen dark, all he has is himself. And it's not enough. In Big League Bob, a restaurant manager offers Mr. Krabs more money than he's ever seen to let SpongeBob leave and become a star chef. The moment is simple. A handshake, a signature, and the deal is done. SpongeBob is excited but unsure. He looks to Krabs for guidance, and Krabs, blinded by greed, lets him go. SpongeBob's talent is taken away from its home, put under pressure, and nearly ruined. Mr. Krabs realizes it too late. Without SpongeBob, the restaurant isn't alive. He travels to the stadium to help him, bringing patties as a quiet apology. He doesn't say much, but in that moment, he's no longer chasing the money. He's trying to hold on to something real, something human. He failed to see it before. Now he has to fight to get it back. And then there's Penny Foolish, a story that seems small, a single coin, but says more about Krabs than any epic battle. When he thinks SpongeBob found a penny, something snaps. He obsesses over it. He sees pennies in the sky, in car radios, he loses sleep, and even puts on a charity play begging for change. All for something SpongeBob insists he never had. The spiral gets worse. Mr. Krabs builds a theater, breaks into SpongeBob's house, loses track of time, of logic, of himself. And for what? At the very end, SpongeBob reveals it wasn't a penny. It was a piece of gum. Mr. Krabs falls silent. His obsession had no foundation. His paranoia, his schemes, his growing madness, it was all self-made. He spent all that energy trying to control something that was never real to begin with. These are the steps. Each one peels something away. The big paycheck, the public praise, the false certainty. Piece by piece, the thing he used to define himself stopped working. And what's left is fear of being irrelevant, of losing the people he quietly depends on, of being seen not as a boss or a legend, but just a man. What makes these episodes different is the silence that follows them. He doesn't come out stronger. He doesn't shout, "I've changed!" He just looks around, slower than before, maybe even ashamed. He's not in a battle anymore. He's in the waiting room before the real moment, the one where he has to choose what kind of person he wants to be and what he's willing to lose to stay the same. Mr. Krabs stands at the edge of something he can't explain, a feeling more than a moment. Everything he's built feels like it could fall apart, and the only way through it is to let go of the past he's been clinging to so tightly. He survived the silence of doubt and the string of small regrets, but it's only when the systems he built turn against him that everything starts to fall apart. Sometimes the things that always worked just stop working. The voice that once ran the room doesn't land the same. The habits that used to feel smart start to feel tired, and the things you thought make you strong suddenly don't feel like enough. Mr. Krabs has spent his life running the same play. Chase the money, keep control, never look back. But there comes a point when even he can't ignore the cracks forming. Not around him, but inside. In My Two Krabses, his control starts to split in the most literal way possible. After SpongeBob helps him build a mechanical suit meant to maximize his efficiency, earn more, rest less, Mr. Krabs gets a taste of what it means to be everywhere at once. At first, it's a dream. He's in two places, doing twice the work, bringing in double the money. But the machine quickly goes rogue. It starts copying his mindset. Greed, shortcuts, commands. The robot starts giving orders, even to Krabs himself, and he listens. It's strange watching him take instructions from a voice that's technically his own, but louder, colder, more extreme. The robot doesn't care about SpongeBob, doesn't understand limits, and doesn't stop when things go too far. It treats people like parts of a business, not people. And Mr. Krabs, exhausted and unsure, begins to fade into the background of his own operation. The moment it all turns quiet, when the machine locks him out, when his own system replaces him, he's no longer needed, not even by his own design. He tries to fight it, but he's lost track of where the real Krabs ends and the performance begins. The business ran better without him, more focused, more efficient, but less human. Then there's Money Talks, an episode that starts as a fantasy, but turns into something darker. Mr. Krabs wishes that money could talk to him, and for a short time, it does. The stacks of bills and piles of coins whisper promises, suggestions, temptations. They feed his ego, praise his instincts. They make him feel special. At first, it's thrilling. He finally hears what he always wanted to believe, that his obsession is genius. But as the episode continues, the praise turns into pressure. The money doesn't want care or appreciation. It wants action. It urges him to hoard more, take faster, give nothing. It makes him ignore others, abandon kindness, treat every person around him like a missed opportunity. And the more he listens, the more alone he becomes. The voices grow louder, but everyone else grows quieter. SpongeBob looks confused. Customers walk out. He's surrounded by wealth, but starved of connection. By the end, Mr. Krabs gets what he thought he wanted, and it's miserable. The money doesn't comfort him. It demands more. It never thanks him. It never stops. When the voices finally fade and the world returns to normal, he doesn't celebrate. He just stands there, tired, a little embarrassed, maybe even scared. For a brief moment, he saw what it looked like to be consumed entirely by the thing he built his life around. Mr. Krabs doesn't say much when it ends. He rarely does. The noise has faded, the distractions are gone, and what's left is weight. The restaurant looks the same, but the air feels different. The people he once counted on are still nearby, but there's a distance now. And though he wouldn't admit it out loud, something in him has changed. A line was crossed, and he can feel it, even if he doesn't know what comes next. His obsession with control and wealth pushes him to the edge, where he loses sight of what truly matters. But even in the middle of his mistakes, small moments of change begin to show him that there might be more to life than the treasures he's chased. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't miss our future videos on your favorite cartoon characters. Some rewards aren't gold or glory. They're quieter, harder to recognize. A second chance, a conversation not ruined, or a moment where someone looks at you with trust instead of disappointment. For someone like Mr. Krabs, who spent so long chasing the wrong treasures, these small wins can feel like the biggest ones, even if he doesn't always know what to do with them. In Whale of a Birthday, Mr. Krabs is given something rare, an opportunity to get it right with his daughter. Pearl's birthday is coming up, and for once, she asks for what she wants. A big, flashy mall party with all the extras. Mr. Krabs hears her, nods, smiles, then completely ignores her wishes. He throws a budget party at the Krusty Krab instead, complete with cheap decorations and reused leftovers. The gift is a novelty spatula. Pearl is crushed, humiliated in front of her friends, and leaves the party in tears. And for a while, Mr. Krabs just stares. Like maybe, for once, the silence gets through. But then, he does something different. He runs after her. Not to defend himself, but to fix it. He empties his wallet, rents out the mall, and gives her the party she asked for in the first place. It's not a smooth recovery. There's no heartfelt speech, no moment where he admits he was wrong. But he shows up. And for a man who usually needs to be dragged towards generosity, that's not nothing. In that decision, he gives up the one thing he never parts with, his money. Just for family. That's the win. Choosing things that matter over money. Then there's Friend or Foe, a flashback-heavy episode that tells the story of Mr. Krabs and Plankton's shared past. As teenagers, they were business partners, bright-eyed, ambitious, and full of plans. They tried running a restaurant together, mixing their talents, Plankton's brains and Krabs' gut instinct. It worked for a moment, then it didn't. A betrayal followed. A lifelong rivalry began, and the two became bitter enemies, each blaming the other for what went wrong. But underneath the fighting, there's something else: regret. Throughout the episode, Krabs reflects, not loudly, but enough to notice. There's a part of him that misses what they had, that remembers what it's like to build something side by side. And then the truth finally comes out, that they both made mistakes, that neither one really won. There's a crack in the wall. They don't make peace, but there's a pause, a shared glance, a little less anger in the room. And sometimes that's all people like them can manage. For Mr. Krabs, who's built a life around holding grudges and guarding secrets, that tiny moment of honesty is more valuable than any locked up recipe. In New Digs, SpongeBob moves out of the pineapple and into the Krusty Krab. It's meant to be temporary, but quickly things get messy. SpongeBob reorganizes the kitchen, turns the dining room into his personal living space, and works 24/7. At first, Mr. Krabs is thrilled, but over time, things start turning for the worst. SpongeBob stops clocking out, stops relaxing. He burns out in real time. Still smiling, still working, but something off in his eyes. He's always there, always giving, and Mr. Krabs starts to notice. It's subtle. He doesn't say anything, doesn't change his ways immediately. But one night after watching SpongeBob fall asleep mid-task, Mr. Krabs gives him a key and tells him to go home. A quiet gesture from someone who finally saw the damage of taking too much from someone who never knew how to say no. One that happens in a singular sentence, but it matters, because it shows that Mr. Krabs, for once, wasn't thinking about profit. He was thinking about a person. Mr. Krabs doesn't always see them for what they are, but the audience does. We see a man who, despite everything, still has people around him, still has chances to do better. And in these rare moments, he does. Not because someone forced him, but because something in him, some small part that's still learning, chose to. That's what becomes his reward. And in Mr. Krabs' world, they're everything he didn't know he needed. Even as Mr. Krabs takes small steps towards change, the old habits still pull at him. And though he may start to recognize their cost, the pressure of his past instincts soon forces him back to familiar ground, testing whether he can truly break free. After everything, the breakdowns, the strange lessons, the small steps forward, Mr. Krabs finds himself back at the Krusty Krab. But something feels a little off. He's been through enough now to start seeing the changes in his own thinking. The people around him and the rules he lived by don't hold like they used to. And yet, even with all of that, when the pressure comes back, so do the old instincts. In the Krabby Patty that ate Bikini Bottom, it all starts with a shortcut. Mr. Krabs finds out about Sandy's growth serum, meant to make plants bigger, and immediately sees one thing: profit. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't think it through. He dumps the entire bottle on a Krabby Patty, eager to sell a giant version of the thing that made him rich. But the patty keeps growing. First, it outgrows the kitchen, then the restaurant, then the city. At each step, Krabs insists that they stay the course, that this is just a bump, just part of the plan, even as the building shakes and people run. When it finally swallows the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs makes his last stand for the cash register. He jumps into the chaos to save it, and for that, the patty swallows him too. It's only later, after the damage is done, that SpongeBob saves the day. With a simple act, absorbing the mess, cleaning it up, putting the world back together. Mr. Krabs doesn't say thank you. He doesn't apologize. But when he climbs out, covered in grease and silence, something is different in his eyes. The restaurant can be rebuilt, the cash register can be replaced, but his grip on control, on being right all the time, comes back weaker. And yet, the world keeps testing him. In Growth Spout, the challenge is closer to home. Pearl is going through a growth spurt, and she's constantly hungry. Krabs, ever the penny pincher, tries to feed her without touching the restaurant's inventory. He steals from everyone. Squidward, SpongeBob, even strangers. He gives away his gold tooth. It's played for laughs, but underneath, it's messy and sad. He's not just being cheap, he's scared. Scared of running out, scared of giving too much, scared that even love will bankrupt him. When none of it works, it's SpongeBob, not Krabs, who suggests bringing Pearl to the Krusty Krab. And it works. Pearl is full. The crisis ends. Krabs, still out of breath, asks what the secret ingredient was. SpongeBob tells him, love. Krabs laughs at first, then stops. He returns to the same place, but something feels different now. The old urges still show up. Cut corners, keep everything close, stay ahead of everyone else. That voice hasn't disappeared, but lately, there are moments where he pauses, when he doesn't follow it right away. He still wants to win, but maybe not at any cost, not every time. And that quiet shift, barely visible to anyone else, starts to shape the way he moves through the world he once ruled without question. He still wants the win, he still fears the loss, but now he pauses. Now he thinks, and sometimes he lets go. Mr. Krabs doesn't come back from the fire as a new man. The things he used to cling to don't feel as sure now, and through them, something new is seeping in. A tiny voice that whispers, maybe there's more to all this than just the money. Though Mr. Krabs begins to question his old ways and make small changes, the pressure of his habits still drag him back into his controlling nature, until an unexpected series of events forces him to face the limits of his power and control. It always comes back to the same place, the Krusty Krab. The idea that as long as he stays in control, nothing can break him. But sometimes, control isn't enough. Sometimes, things fall apart so completely that the only way out is through. And Mr. Krabs, for all his flaws, finds himself in those moments with fewer answers than he expected. In SpongeBob You're Fired, it starts cold. Krabs cuts SpongeBob's job to save a nickel. It's harsh, even by his standards. SpongeBob begs to stay, offers to work for free. Krabs says no, because of legal issues. He walks away as SpongeBob floods the restaurant with tears. Alone, Krabs thinks he's won. But without SpongeBob, the place falls apart. Krabs tries to cook himself. Everything feels wrong. He doesn't say it, but he misses the sponge. Misses what he brought. Not just the labor, but the life. The moment he realizes it's quiet, undramatic, he just watches the kitchen fall apart and feels something sink. Later, when SpongeBob finally returns, not for money, but out of loyalty, Krabs doesn't thank him. But he doesn't fire him again either. Sometimes, keeping someone close is as close as Krabs gets to saying he was wrong. And then, there's the Curse of the Hex. A mysterious woman, Madam Hagfish, curses the Krusty Krab after Krabs refuses to give her a meal without payment. Everything falls apart. The whole place collapsing in slow motion. The customers leave. SpongeBob begs him to reconsider. Just give her a meal, he says. Just this once. Krabs refuses. Holds the line. Until the building starts to literally rot from the inside. Only then does he walk outside. Only then does he offer her a bowl of food for free. It was just an old man, standing in the rain, giving up a plate he swore he wouldn't give for free. And when he does, the curse lifts. The Krusty Krab survives. But something else changes too. Krabs doesn't smile, doesn't gloat, just watches the woman walk away and stays quiet. It's not a big moment. He just lets go of something he never thought he would. Not because he has to, but because this time, something else feels more important. The place, the people. Maybe even a part of himself he forgot was still there. They're clumsy, small, a little late wins. Mr. Krabs doesn't become a new man, but he doesn't walk away the same either. For someone who spent his life avoiding softness, even one honest moment means something. He's just stayed still, took the hit, and chose differently. And sometimes, that's enough. Mr. Krabs starts letting go, but change still feels hard. And sometimes, it's too late to fix things. Coming back looks like any other day. The tables are in the same place, the grill still sizzles, the usual voices fill the room. Mr. Krabs is back behind the counter like nothing's changed, but the way he moves is different. He still keeps an eye on the register, still notices every coin, but there's a little more quiet in how he holds it. Decisions don't come as fast, and once in a while, they come from something other than habit. In My Father the Boat, it starts like a familiar cycle. Pearl wants something big for her birthday, a fancy new boat. Mr. Krabs makes a promise without thinking, then panics when he realizes the cost. So he cuts corners, builds her a fake version using scrap parts. It looks good, but it doesn't work. And instead of being honest, he hides inside it, pretending everything is fine. Old habits dressed in a new disguise. But when the truth comes out, after Pearl drives into a demolition derby and the whole boat is exposed, Krabs doesn't yell. He apologizes for lying, for trying to fake something instead of trusting her with the truth. Pearl is angry and she doesn't let him off easy, but she listens, and that's the change. Mr. Krabs doesn't chase her with excuses, he lets her have her moment. For a man who's spent his life proving he's in control, this is something new, letting someone else feel what they need to feel, even if it means sitting with his own guilt. Later, she buys herself 2 boats using his credit card, and Krabs doesn't even scream. Then, in A Place for Pets, Mr. Krabs faces another test, this time from his own success. When a wealthy customer offers to pay double for her pet to eat the Krusty Krab, he changes the rules. Pets are now allowed. Business starts to boom. Customers dress up like animals to get in. Money starts flowing, but quickly the place becomes chaos. Fights, mess, overcrowding. Still, Krabs doesn't stop. Not until SpongeBob steps in and gently sorts out the mess. In the end, the health inspector, a key part of the scam, admits it was all performance. The lesson lands awkwardly. People and pets eat together. The restaurant feels full with something closer to warmth, and Krabs, buried under complaints, regulations, and exhaustions, doesn't snap. He listens. He doesn't fix everything, but he lets the moment happen. That's all it takes. These aren't big victories. They won't change Bikini Bottom, but they leave small marks. The people around him, Pearl, SpongeBob, even the customers, notice a difference. He doesn't shout as much. He hesitates before tricking someone. He still loves money, still slips up, still dreams about gold. But now, there's more space between the thought and the action. And that space is where the real change lives. What Mr. Krabs learns is the ability to pause, to think before hurting someone, to remember that survival doesn't always mean shutting others out, that sometimes giving, even if it's messy, awkward, or late, is more powerful than taking. It doesn't make him perfect, but it makes him human, and that's enough for now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.